Well, thank you, Ashley, for being here.
Thank you for having me.
I'm very excited.
Me too.
And I want to start by saying I felt so bad a month ago when, so I interviewed Ashley's boyfriend, Jacob, and he said, I'm dating someone in the rooms. And I said, who? He said, Ashley. And I said, do I know her? And like a week later, I saw Nakia. And Nakia was like, Janine, it's fucking Ashley. And I was like, I know. And then when I saw you in the bathroom and you were like, yo, like that was me. But like, here's what happens. I have been, not to start this interview talking about me, but here we are.
It's okay.
have been so fucking burned in the last few years by a couple of close female friendships that I'm not even trying anymore.
Yeah, I get that.
Even at my studio, I feel, and this is something I need to work on.
Yeah.
At my studio, there are women in my classes that have been taking classes now for like 18 months.
Yeah.
And they love me, follow me on Instagram, and I don't know their names. And at my other studio, that never would have happened. I would have known their name, where they went to college, their kids' names.
Yeah.
And I'm so scared now that I think I had this, like, I'm like, I can't get close to, and so I don't know hardly anyone at that meeting except for Nakia, because she listens to the show and would talk to me.
Yeah.
I'm actually glad because it made me look at something I needed to look at.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I was actually impressed by you too. How old are you?
I'm 21.
Okay. At 21, to look at me in the bathroom and be like, Janine, I'm Ashley. I can't believe you didn't know. I'm actually really proud of you for calling me out on that.
I was actually terrified because, like, okay, I
awesome,
am
though.
somebody who is intimidated by everything and everyone. And I am also somebody who is a codependent overthinker and people pleaser.
Me too.
So even if I smile at somebody and they don't smile back, I'm like, oh, fuck, they hate me.
Totally.
And it's so self-centered. And, like, it took me, I think I didn't say that to you until, like, a month after the episode came out.
It was, like, a while later.
It took me that long because I was nervous.
Yeah.
And I was, like, in a weird way, like, I know, like, in your perspective, it's, like, the female friendships and you have, like, that guard up because of, you know, past experiences. I kind of have the same thing, but it's just because in a way, like, women scare me.
Yeah.
Women scare me. And, like, I am so quick to think that, like, somebody doesn't like me. And so I don't want to address that because I'm also afraid of confrontation. But
Totally.
It's so fucking self-centered, too.
Yeah. My mom, I was actually talking to my mom about it recently because I'm super close to my dad. And I was like, I think I have an easier time sometimes. And it's so cliche to be that girl in recovery that's like, oh, I don't get along with women. And I'm not to that level.
Yeah.
It's just like a few recent friendships that I've lost and I just can't go through it again.
Yeah,
but
absolutely.
It is very easy to talk to men. And I was telling my mom that. I was like, I think maybe it's because I'm so close to dad and we have such a good relationship.
Yeah.
And she said, maybe, but also with men, it's very surface.
Yes.
With women, like, they really see you.
Yeah.
And I think that's when you shut down a little.
Yeah.
And I was like, you know what? You're right. Because I was thinking it was some parent-related thing because I didn't get along with her as well when I was a kid. But when she said that, I was like, no, that does make more sense. And I think that's how a lot of us, you know, feel.
Yeah. I don't know where that fear of mine stems from. Because the reality is, like, I'm afraid of people. It's very different now. It used to be a lot worse where, like, I just had this constant fear of people. And, like, I'm getting better at that now because I kind of fucking realize that, like, nobody is fucking paying attention.
Yeah.
Nobody is paying attention. And also, like, there's nothing to be afraid of. And I don't know, I'm afraid of confrontation in general. And I think that sometimes my brain thinks that women are going to be more confrontational, which isn't actually the case.
Not always, for sure. Regardless, I felt terrible. And of course I know who you are. And I'm glad that you said something. And it also made me look at something. And then also I remembered, especially when I heard your lead last week, not only do I know you, at
Breathworks, yeah.
You saw the vision of your friend and told me afterwards.
Yeah.
Of course, I want to get to all that. But let's start with, so you led a meeting last Saturday.
Yes.
And I am so, you did great.
Thank you.
And like,
thank you.
I don't always think that, right? Like, not to make anybody feel bad, but you know, I've been going to meetings for like a long time.
Yeah.
And I always start with an open mind. And after like 10 minutes of you talking, Skylar and I looked at each other and I was like, holy shit, like, you have such a good story. You tell it so well. I can't believe you're only 21 and you know so much about recovery. I was so impressed. I was fucking
Thank you.
blown away by everything you had to say.
Thank you.
Blown away.
I was terrified.
Were you?
I was so terrified.
Dude, it didn't read at all because you said that ahead of time. Your voice didn't wobble. You were completely centered. You could not tell at all that you were scared.
That's another of like a self-centered thing.
Right.
Like,
yeah.
And Kevin and I were actually talking about it the week before.
Yeah.
Where he was like, are you terrified? And I was like, fuck yeah, I'm terrified. And he was like, dude, I have 7 years. I get terrified every time.
Totally.
And then we were talking about how it's still just such a selfish fear.
Yeah.
Because it's like we care about people's perception, but it's not about that. And
yeah.
Like right now I'm terrified too.
Right. But I love that you bring it back to the fact that it is being self-centered, actually, because I feel like people think it's like being self-conscious, but there's a self-centeredness in that. Like everyone is paying attention to me. And so really, when you look at it from that way, you can kind of release some of it. So I want them to hear what I heard. So let's talk about your family, where you're from, where you grew up.
Obviously, I'll be able to get into more detail now than I was in my share because there's a lot of in between, of course. But I grew up in the San Fernando Valley. I grew up in a house with my grandparents on my mom's side. My mom, my dad, and my sister. And my family is full of addicts, alcoholics, mental health issues. And when I was 6, it was Easter Day. This is my first memory of my childhood. It was Easter Day. And my mom kept telling my sister and I that we couldn't go down and do our Easter egg hunt yet because we were waiting for my father. And she kept saying that all day. We're waiting for your dad. We're waiting for your dad. Turns out my dad never came home because he got arrested that day. And he actually got arrested because he was selling automatic weapons with the Russian mafia. Yeah. So like my dad is like, go big or go home type of guys would always say.
Yeah.
But yeah, so he got arrested for that. My grandpa is a boxing publicist and so had a lot of connections. And so my grandpa got my dad a really good attorney who actually worked on OJ's legal team.
Oh, shit.
Yeah. His name was Bob Shapiro and...
Wait, yeah.
Yeah.
Robert Shapiro.
Yeah.
Yeah, of course.
And so...
I look up to lawyers. This is fucking weird. The way, like, F. Lee Bailey was, like, my hero when I was a teenager. He represented, like, the Boston strang, like, weird shit. I looked up to lawyers the way, like, I waited on Mark Garagos a few times in L.A., downtown L.A. He's represented, like, you know, pretty famous people, Scott Peterson. And I have the same, so I do know who Robert Shapiro is.
Oh,
so
wow.
he represented your dad?
He did. And I don't know if that's the only reason why my dad got the short amount of time that he did, because he was facing at least 5 years.
Okay.
And like selling automatic weapons with the Russian mafia is a lot.
Right.
Like,
right.
So there was probably other factors besides just Robert Shapiro.
Right.
But my dad went to prison for 14 months.
Okay.
That was kind of like the start of my kind of like distrust in people, but in men, but mostly in him. And I was very close with my dad growing up.
Okay.
I don't remember his using from ages, you know, up until I was 6 because I was so young. And the only memory I have is, you know, the day he got arrested.
Okay.
But I was really close with my dad. And I just remember like every single night when he was in prison, I would sleep in the bed with my mom and I would just cry. And I didn't know what was going on. I didn't know why he was away. And like, we did visit him, and he told me, I don't remember this, but he told me that when we visited him, it was where it was like through the glass with the phone. And he asked me if I was okay. And I said, are you okay? And he said, yeah, I'm okay. And I said, okay, well, if you're okay, then I'm okay. And I was crying, I guess, when I said that to him. And he started crying. And he told me the story years later. But that was kind of like the first really huge moment in my life, because my dad was like my everything. I was really close with him. I loved my dad. And like, of course I still love my dad. And I still loved him after that. But it was really hard because I was so young. I didn't understand what was going on. And my mom, I love my mom. I love her. And she's an amazing soul. My mom is a codependent, an enabler. And unfortunately that popped up a lot as well. I mean, she was my rock when my dad was gone. And then after my dad got out of prison, he actually was sober for almost 9 years.
Oh, wow.
And in those almost 9 years, he was like in it. Like, my dad sponsored so many men all the time. I saw all of like this amazing stuff he did for them. And I loved AA. And like, I didn't know why he was there or like what he was doing. But like, I loved going and giving him a cake every year.
Oh, your family would go and give him a cake?
Yeah,
oh, that's awesome.
Every year he would talk about, of course, my sister and I and my mom, and, you know, he would tear up. And then there would be so many people talking about all of the good things that he's done for them.
Yeah.
And so, like, even though I didn't know what it was, I knew that it was good.
Okay.
And so that was like, I put him back up on a pedestal. And I went to all of his sober softball tournaments.
Aww.
I was like always around him. I went to meetings with him constantly. Like, I enjoyed it. And I didn't know what was going on, but I enjoyed it because he was happy, other people were happy, and I saw him helping people.
Yeah.
And like, that was like a big part of my childhood. Like, AA was a big part of my childhood. And I knew the Serenity Prayer by like age 6.
Like, I think of all the kids I see sitting on the floor at meetings on the corner, that or on the side, that was you.
Yeah.
Okay.
And I loved it.
Yeah.
And like, you know, in that time, my parents still had a tumultuous relationship.
They did.
I actually, when my dad was using the first time, my dad's a meth and gambling addict.
Okay.
So for one, I was a premature baby. I was 6 weeks early. My dad was at a casino when I was born. And I don't think he came home to be with my mom. And I was like, I was born with asthma, I was jaundiced, and I was in the hospital for a while.
Okay.
Because I was so premature. And one of the things that my dad had done in his addiction the first time was he pawned everything. Of course, he pawned my mom's wedding ring and my mom's engagement ring. And my whole life I was told that it got stolen, like that somebody robbed us.
Okay.
Until my dad was a few years sober. And my dad is a hustler, whether he's sober or using. So when he got sober, he was like doing so well in his career. Like, he's an amazing salesman. He's very charismatic, very charming. People love him. And he was really good at it. And so he was doing pretty well. And so I didn't find out about the whole wedding ring until Christmas when he was about 4 years sober. And he said, oh, we're going to go and buy mom a replacement. And that was when I found out that it was gone because he had pawned it in his addiction.
Did he tell you that in that moment, or how did you figure it out?
I think he alluded to it.
Okay.
And at that point, I was a little bit older, so I started to understand.
Okay.
And also, like, my family had told me kind of like things about my dad, and I at that point started to kind of learn what was going on.
Okay.
And I remember vividly the day that we gifted it to my mom.
Aww.
And she was just crying. And like, my dad used to always call my mom a saint because they've been married for 22 years.
They're still married?
And yes, I'll get to that.
Okay.
They are still legally married. Yeah.
Okay.
But my mom, in those 22 years, when they met, my dad was sober. They met because my aunt was in NA with my dad.
Okay.
And they had a Super Bowl party. And it was a mixture of AA people, NA people, and family.
Okay.
So that's how my parents met.
Okay.
But my dad was sober when they met. And there was a lot of relapses in between, like from before I was born as well.
Yeah.
But my dad would always say, like, oh, like, she's a saint. She's a saint because she put up with all the shit.
Yeah.
And like, at that point, even though like he was like righting his wrongs in certain ways, like my living environment was still very tumultuous.
Okay.
Because my dad still had a lot of anger. And it wasn't, you know, it got a lot worse when he relapsed. But like, even when he was sober and like sponsoring all these people, and like, my dad is a great person when he's sober. And so like, it never made sense to me. But my parents would argue a lot. My dad would yell a lot. There's a lot of slamming doors, a lot of stuff. And I actually developed CPTSD. Okay. And so when my dad was sober, they were still arguing. And then my dad wanted to move. So we moved. We moved to Santa Clarita. and we moved to this amazing, gorgeous house. My dad was making like $600,000 a year.
Damn.
As a salesman. Like, he was doing great. We were going on trips. We had everything. Like, we had all the material things. My dad is a material person. He wants to have nice things. He wants money. And he would get new cars every year, like all of this stuff. And like, he would do all of these things in the program. But like I said, like, there was still a lot of like tumultuous stuff happening in my house. And like, the only difference that I feel like when it came to his anger was that it wasn't as bad when he was sober, but like, he would leave after every like little blow up, and then he would text us and he would like make amends over text.
Okay. When he was sober.
Yeah.
Okay.
When he was sober. And so...
Was it ever physical?
Not when he was sober.
Okay.
At least not to my knowledge.
Okay.
But when we lived in that big house and all of that, that's when it got kind of worse, because I think my dad kind of started to slip away from the program.
Okay. And CPSD, I feel like I just recently learned, is that chronic PTSD? What does that stand for?
Complex post-traumatic stress disorder.
What is that?
It's basically... Because PTSD is usually based off of like one like event or situation.
Okay.
Complex PTSD, which is very common in people who have suffered like childhood abuse or just like tumultuous childhoods. It's a bunch of traumatic things that happen over time.
Okay.
So it's like kind of something that just continues going on.
Okay.
And so the fighting got worse, but my dad was still doing well in his job. We would go on all these trips. And I just remember every single trip, it would be a great trip. We would do all this amazing stuff. And like, but my parents would argue on every single trip.
Yeah.
And my dad would say really nasty things to my mom. And I would hear it and I would just cry. And like, my biggest fear when I was younger was them divorcing.
Yeah.
And so I would like cry my eyes out when they would fight and beg my mom not to divorce him. And like, we went to Hawaii at one point, and we stayed in this like amazing house. It was great. It was beautiful. We went to Maui for 12 days. And when we got back from Maui, my dad found out that he was getting a pay cut that was still going to have him well over like, you know, he was going to be well off still.
Yeah. Yeah.
And like at that point we were really like not like, you know, this isn't me bragging or anything, but like we were like in the 1%. Like
Right.
we had a lot of money at that time.
Yeah.
So the pay cut really wasn't a big deal, but to my dad it was.
Okay.
And his boss was somebody in the program. And so he started to build this resentment towards the program.
Okay.
Because of his boss. And it's like the day we got back from Hawaii was when this happened. And so it's like, I didn't really know about that until a few years later, but like he started slipping away from the program.
Okay.
And I noticed that he was not going to as many meetings. I noticed he was angrier. I noticed a lot. And then one day I was at my grandma's house, his mom's house. We were visiting, and I was going into the bathroom, and I look and I see my grandma talking to her friend, and she mouths and she says, "Johnny's using again."
Oh no.
And I shut that bathroom door and I cried and cried and cried. And I was about 15.
Okay.
And at that point I had never taken a sip of alcohol, smoked weed, none of it, because I was dead set that I wasn't going to do those things because my dad was so happy without them.
Right.
But the day that I found out that he had relapsed, I honestly, like, I felt like my entire life was just flipped upside down.
Yeah.
And I just remembered feeling so devastated, not knowing what to do and not knowing like how to like talk about it to my family or ask my mom about it, because my mom was hiding it too. And then it at one point just got too hard to hide. And so when I kind of started seeing all of like what my dad was doing, I decided like, fuck it, I might as well, you know, party.
Okay. What did you start seeing of his, like paraphernalia and stuff? What would you see?
Staying up for days on
Okay.
end, being gone all the time. I don't know. It was like, even though he looked miserable, he still looked like he had this like adrenaline rush, which of course was the speed.
Right.
And like, for whatever reason, I just thought like, okay, his life was so good and he still went out and got high. So like, getting high must be really good.
Okay.
And so I started off smoking weed and drinking, and all of my friends were so shocked because I literally was always the one to say like, I'm never doing that. I'm never doing that. I'm never doing that. And I progressed really quickly.
Okay.
And I got into Xanax, and that was my biggest drug of choice.
Okay.
I mean, weed was as well. I smoked weed all day, every day, but that became more normal for me. But I got into Xanax, and then my dad and I started, some days we would be fighting and stealing each other's money. My dad, he would do this thing where he would steal my money or my sister's money. I would ask him if he took it. He would say no. And then 2 days later, he would come back and he would be like, oh, hey, like, I remember you told me that you lost this amount of money. Here you go.
Oh, my gosh. Just like blatantly lying. Yeah. That's so funny. I'm going to shut this so he doesn't come back in. Okay, so he would take your money.
He would take my money and then
How did you have money? Did you have like a job?
I did, actually, yeah. So this is kind of a funny story, too. So when I was 14, the only place that hired at 14 was Six Flags.
Okay.
And since I lived in Santa Clarita, I started working in food service at Six Flags. There was one day that, because I worked there for almost 2 years, and there was one day after I'd started using, of course, that a coworker and I, who were planning on using together that night, decided collectively that I was going to like slip a 20 from the register, and it was only $20, you know. Of course, that's didn't seem like a big deal to me at the time. And I would have gotten away with it. Like, I did it in a pretty, like, sneaky way. I, like, put in the system that somebody had only paid for, like, this one cup that they bought, like, souvenir cup, but instead they actually got 2. And so then I just took the remainder.
Okay.
And so that night, my friend and I were high, and one of our other coworkers came over. And I don't understand this, but my coworker decided to say, yeah, we got this because we stole money from the register.
Oh my gosh.
To our other coworkers.
Right.
And then the next day.
They told on you?
They told on us.
Oh shit. Did you get fired?
The next day I go into work and they pull me to the loss prevention office. And they sit there and they fucking interrogate me for hours.
Oh shit.
And I was not letting up. I was fucking playing dumb.
Okay.
And they kept asking me if I wanted to like call my parents and have them there since I was a minor, and I was like, "Fuck like, no, are you crazy? Like, fuck no, what the fuck?" And like they kept saying also like, if you just admit that you did this, we'll let you go. Like, we'll let you leave here right now. And I was like, I didn't. Like, I was so dead set on not owning up to it, which of course, like, I'm an addict,
right.
You know? Like I said, I'm afraid of people and confrontation. So like when I did those fucked up things, when I stole, when I lied, like part of me kind of felt bad, but also I was just more afraid of getting caught.
Yeah.
I was afraid of the consequences.
Totally.
So thankfully, because I'm a minor, they had to let me leave at a certain time, and I left, and I just never went back.
Okay.
I was like, I don't want to get in trouble. I don't want to like go through that whole thing. Like,
right.
I guess I don't work there anymore.
Right.
And I stopped going to work.
Right.
So that was when that was where I got most of my money.
Okay.
And at the time. And so I got fired from there. I also was like kind of selling weed in high school as well. And so my dad would actually also give me stuff of his to sell. Like, he would give me weed and, like, all of these, like, things. And he would also steal my drugs. And he would tell me that he was stealing my Xanax because they were pressed and he was flushing them down the toilet.
To save you.
Yeah, to save me. And I would say, no, you took them. And he goes, I don't fucking need that fake shit. And so it was like, dude, come on.
Yeah.
You know? And, like, that was just one of, like, the many fucking things that, like, like, the way that my dad thinks and the way that my dad would say, it's like, I was looking in a fucking mirror.
Yeah.
And I started to resent him because of that.
Okay.
Especially when I started to kind of deep down know what was going on with me. I knew in my heart that I had a problem.
Okay.
And that it was starting. And there were, like, so many times that I snuck out of the house. There was one time that I snuck out of my grandparents' house and I accidentally left the light on in the room that I was sleeping in, and my grandpa went in, and it was on my sister's birthday. My grandpa went in and saw the light, called my mom. I had put my phone in the mailbox because my mom had my location.
Oh, gosh.
So my phone was in the mailbox, and I had taken a taxi in the middle of the night, this, like, 15-year-old girl, to my friend's house. And all of a sudden, my sister calls my friend and asks if I'm there. And she's like, I don't know what you're talking about. And she's like, I know she's fucking there. I know she is. And so I'm like, fuck, I need to go home. I order another taxi thinking that I'm going to be able to save myself by going home and pretending I was there the whole time.
Yeah.
And as soon as the taxi pulls up, my mom pulls up in her car. And she's...
The phone in the mailbox thing was pretty funny, though.
I know. And
Here, keep going. I'm just going to check the camera. Keep talking.
Yeah. And she told me, too. She was like, you know that I found your phone in the mailbox.
That's actually, like, hilarious.
And I was like, yeah. I was like, I thought I was going to get away with it. And so when the taxi pulled up and my mom pulled up at the same time, my mom kept trying to ask the driver who ordered the ride. And I was like, I didn't order it. It wasn't me. It wasn't me. And so, like, I went home that night and, like, didn't suffer much consequence.
Okay.
And then a few months later, I had a situation where I was with some friends and we were doing NOS, like nitrous oxide.
Oh, I've never done nitrous.
It's like Whippets in a way.
Okay.
Like, it's like the same effect.
Okay.
And it was very popular in the San Fernando Valley. But basically, we were doing it, and I was in the car with two of my friends and then my friend's boyfriend. And my friend's boyfriend was like 19 or 20, and we were like 16. So we drove down to North Hollywood, and we got some nitrous oxide. Because it goes in cars. So, like, there's certain car shops that will sell it to you in a tank.
Okay.
So the first thing that happened that day was we were in the car and I, like, was a little bit, like, fucked up on my balloon. And I was like, wait, I want to get in the trunk of the car. Like, I feel like it would be fun. So I get in the trunk and I bring a balloon with me, of course, because I need to be high while I'm in there.
You voluntarily get into the trunk of the car.
Yeah, I asked him to stop the car.
Oh,
I
my
don't know
gosh.
why. And so I get in the trunk, I use my balloon, it starts to wear off, and I realize I'm claustrophobic.
Oh my gosh.
And I am screaming. I'm like, open the fucking trunk. Like, I'm gonna die. Like, open the trunk. And then all of a sudden the trunk opens up, and he had pulled over on the 405 freeway to let me out.
Oh my God. I can't even imagine the people driving by that saw a girl climbing out of the trunk of the car.
Yeah. So that was just like another story of me doing dumb shit, you know,
Yeah.
for the fuck of it, of course, because it's the like adrenaline rush, but then it's also like terrifying.
Yeah.
And so that was always so funny to me too. But so all of that happens and I'm still using bad. My dad's still using bad. And all of a sudden, one day I find out we're getting evicted from our house because my dad, within one fucking year, went from us being wealthy as fuck to us being evicted because of his gambling.
Yeah.
We were evicted. We had to file bankruptcy.
Oh, shit.
And that was when, like, it got really bad. Like, my dad did start abusing my mom and I. And that was just, for me, like, at the time, it gave me more reason to use. And, like, I just remember there were times where he would, like, put his hand on my neck. Like, that's what he would do, and he would abuse me. And, like, one time I tried to, like, start to call 911, and he grabbed my phone, he threw it at the wall. And then my mom would get mad at me when I would try to, like, call the cops or something because she said I was making it worse.
Yeah.
And he would tell me constantly, like, you're the reason I relapsed. You and your mom are the reason I relapsed. You're the reason we're getting evicted. Like, all of this shit. And I believed him because I was fucking 15.
Yeah.
But I also, like, still stayed around him until I absolutely despised him. But that was, like, another pivotal moment. And then we moved back in with my grandparents where I grew up. And I actually ended up getting kicked out of my high school for selling weed.
Okay.
And I had to go to a different high school where it was a very different vibe. I didn't know anybody. I hated it. That was also when I met my boyfriend, Trevor, at the time. So one night I had asked him to take me to get Xanax. And when we got there, he bought some too. And I didn't know he was planning on buying some. And so he took one. I took one. We're driving on the freeway. He starts kind of swerving because he's fucked up. Yeah. And he hits something on the road. And he's like, okay, we have to call AAA. So we go and we like go into this random parking lot, call AAA. We're waiting and waiting. We both fall asleep. I wake up at 2 a.m. to my mom dragging me out of the car because she had my location again.
Oh, right. Okay.
And so like that time she knew I was out, but obviously I wasn't supposed to be out till 2 a.m. Yeah. And so she knew I was fucked up, drags me out of the car. He's barely conscious. I'm too scared and too fucked up to think about the fact of like, fuck, I should wake him up or like make sure he knows like I'm leaving. Like I just left. And the next day I went to work. At this point I was working at McDonald's. I worked there after Six Flags. I went to work and I was at the drive-thru window. It was busy. And I saw he had texted me and he was supposed to be picking me up from work that day. So I was like, oh, okay. He texted me about picking me up. Like, it's fine. I'll see you later. I finally look at my phone. It says 28 minutes. I remember exactly how long it had been since he had texted me. And I open his message and he says, my parents found out I was using. They kicked me out. And my brother and I got in a fight. I'm going to go and tie a rope to a tree. Sorry.
No, that's okay. No, it's okay. It's okay. This is just really important. So I want to make sure we get it all.
Of course, yeah. So he texted me that, and like I've had experiences in the past where like friends of mine had said stuff like that and then like they didn't actually do it.
Right, of course.
But I had like this fucking aching feeling, and I called him and his phone went straight to voicemail. I call his dad, and his dad had just found him and he hung himself on a tree outside his house. And I just fucking broke down and went home. And at that point I felt a little bit responsible because I was the last person that he contacted.
Yeah.
I was the last person he texted, and I felt like if I would have called him sooner, if I would have seen that text sooner, maybe I could have saved him, and I know now that's not the case.
Yeah.
But he was brain dead in the hospital. Wow. They were going to pull the plug the next day. I was in contact with his family, with his best friend, all of these people, and like we were going to go and say goodbye before pulling the plug. And about 2 hours before we're going to go and say goodbye, I start getting loads of messages, calls, all of this from his friends, from his brother, from his parents. They had heard from somebody that I used with him. And so they basically just all started telling me, like, you can't fucking come and say goodbye. Like, you're the reason he's dead. Like, it's your fault. Like, you got him high. Like, it's your fault. And because I was at a time in my life where I felt like such a piece of shit, because, you know, hearing almost every day from my dad that I was the reason he relapsed. I was the reason why him and my mom were having marriage issues. And so because of all of that going on, I believed that I was the reason that he died.
Yeah.
I fucking believed it. And I just remember for 2 weeks laying in bed, not taking one sip of water, not eating. The only time that I got up from bed was to go and meet my dealer outside. And I was hoping that I would just die.
Yeah.
I didn't want to actually take my life because I was scared.
Yeah.
And I also didn't want to do to his family do to my family what he did to his.
Yeah.
And I still just kind of was hoping I would die. And then about 2 weeks in of me not eating food, drinking water, my mom ends up trying to get me to go to the hospital to get an IV because I was literally deteriorating.
Okay.
And I just started screaming, like, please just, like, let me lay here and die. I want to die.
Yeah.
And my mom, like, picked me up out of bed and she took me to the hospital. And I was so mad. Like, I just wanted to be dead.
Yeah.
I just wanted to, like, get away from the pain and the guilt that I felt from me thinking that I was the reason that my boyfriend died.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I go to the hospital because I have to. But I just believed that I was a fucking piece of shit. That I didn't deserve to be alive. I didn't deserve to have what I had. I didn't deserve to be the one who didn't die. Like, I wanted so badly to switch places with him.
Yeah.
And I didn't get to go to his memorial service because I was banned from that as well.
Okay.
I had tried to figure out if he was buried so I could visit his grave. He was cremated. So I didn't really have closure.
Okay.
And at that point, I was at the worst of my using. I was at the worst of my depression. I was like 90 pounds. I didn't eat. I barely ever slept. Like, I wanted to be dead, but I was too afraid to take my life.
Yeah.
And everything with my dad continued to get worse and worse and worse.
Okay.
So it was like all of this stuff going on, and like all of these things that have happened are not, of course, not the reason that I'm an addict. You know? Like I say, like I talked about, it's because I have an obsession of the mind and an allergy of the body. But at the time, I used it as excuses.
Yeah.
And so my using just kept progressing. And
were you at a point where you would get sick if you didn't have benzos?
Actually, oh my God, how did I forget this? I had seizures.
From the benzo use?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I had seizures. And I was so adamant that it was from like stress.
Right.
Because I didn't want to believe that it was from withdrawal.
Did you think it could be from withdrawal deep down or not really?
I think so.
Okay.
I think so. Because the hospital tried to tell me that. My mom tried to tell me that. Like, every single time it happened, I had 3 of them within the span of 2 years.
Okay. And were you still going to school during this time? Would you get up and go to school? Okay.
Yeah, I was actually still working too.
Okay.
But I was just miserable. And so that continued. And I was at this school where I didn't like anybody. So all I did was get high and cry and isolate. If I wasn't at work, I was at home high and isolating. I didn't like to go out. I just wanted to use by myself because I didn't want somebody to judge me of how much I was using.
Yeah.
And it got to the point where my tolerance had built so much that I was taking at least 10 Xanax pills a day, which is 20 milligrams a day.
Okay.
And that's like at the least.
Okay.
All of my money, of course, that I was earning at the time would go towards my using. And I was just in the worst possible space. And that was when I started to tell myself, I am going to be dead by the time I turn 18. Either I'm going to finally get the balls to kill myself or I'm going to accidentally overdose, but I will be dead. And I didn't plan a future, and I really fucking believed that.
Did you want to be, or
Yes.
you did? Okay.
I did.
Okay.
I did. I wanted to be. And I was so mad at myself because I felt like I wasn't brave enough to kill myself, and I was angry about that.
Yeah.
And like, I'm glad, of course, now.
Yeah.
But I was so mad at myself, and I was like, thought that I was like a little bitch for not actually killing myself.
Yeah.
And I just was miserable, and like, everything was just crashing down around me. And like, my dad he started smuggling drugs with the cartel, with the Mexican cartel, and told my sister and I, so I knew about it. And there was one night where he came in the room and he was like, okay, so I have a really big load this time. So if I don't come back in 24 hours, I'm either arrested or I'm dead. And left. And then the next day he didn't come home, and I just like knew he wasn't dead.
Yeah.
And I just fucking knew it. And all of a sudden it's like 3 a.m. I'm high as fuck, but I hear my mom from the other room go, damn it, Johnny. And I'm like, oh,
he got busted.
Shit. He got busted with 90 pounds of fucking meth.
At the border?
Yeah, at the border. 90 pounds. Like, that's a lot of fucking meth.
Holy shit.
And, like, that is why I say he's a go big or go home type of guy. 'Cause,
Yeah.
like, when he does crime,
Yeah.
he does it to the fucking extent that he can, like, to the highest extent.
Yeah.
And so he got arrested. It was right around COVID. It was 2020 was when he got arrested. So because of COVID, my dad got let off easy, and he was able to not go to jail for about a year.
Okay.
And
like, they didn't hold him until trial. He was out.
He was
awaiting
out.
trial.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Was it a Fed case? I think they call it pretrial services. Not that it really matters. So he was out until he went to trial?
Yes.
Okay.
And my mom had to like go and pick up his phone and his computer from the DEA office.
Oh my gosh.
The DEA. And she was like, she came home and she was like, I got your dad's stuff. And he got mad at me because I threw away all the paraphernalia that I found in his room, and I'm not giving him his laptop, blah, blah, blah. And then she goes, but the DEA agents were pretty cute.
Oh my gosh.
Mom. I'm like, okay, cool.
Yeah.
And so then that happened. My dad was out for a year, and within that year, I was still using. And I was just praying and hoping that he was going to use that time to get sober again, or to at least spend time with my sister and I.
Yeah.
My sister is 2 years older than me. And he didn't, of course. And it got worse. Both of us, our using got worse. Our fights got worse. I was telling him constantly that I wished he was dead.
Okay.
He was telling me the same thing. And it was just this
Your
constant...
mom and your sister stay sober this whole time? Or not sober necessarily, but they're not addicts like you two?
Yeah, exactly. My mom's a normie. My sister might be one of us, but of course that's not my place to tell.
Right.
But my sister actually had gotten pancreatitis a couple of times from drinking.
Oh, okay.
She would binge drink
a
lot.
Okay.
And so she was kind of the one who stuck around and like didn't hate my dad during that whole year. And I fucking despised him.
Okay.
And I would be very vocal about it to him, to my sister, to everybody. But I thought at the time that I was mad because of everything that happened. But I really think I was just angry because I was looking at myself.
Yeah.
I was angry because I thought that I was an addict because of him.
Okay.
And that meant that like everything was his fault. And I didn't want to take accountability, of course, because I'm an addict. And,
right.
You know, and so I would blame him. I would blame everything.
Yeah. And you never got into meth during this whole time? It was just benzos?
It was just benzos.
Okay.
And I would do like acid and like hallucinogenics. I didn't really like uppers.
Okay.
Because they made me anxious.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
So like I mostly stuck with Xanax and weed and alcohol and yeah.
Okay.
But with the weed, I mean, I was smoking weed literally every second of every single day.
Okay.
And then the Xanax, it was basically the same thing. But like my last like 2 years of high school, I barely remember.
Okay.
I have no idea like what went on. I know I
You
graduated.
I can't believe you graduated.
It was during COVID too.
So were you doing it at home online?
I think. I literally can't fucking remember.
Oh
Janine.
my God. You had to have been doing it online.
I told somebody this the other day.
Class of what?
2020.
Okay.
I had a drive.
You must have finished online.
I had to have. I had a drive-through graduation. I remember that. I don't fucking remember anything about
a
doing
drive-through
school.
graduation? What is that?
It was like a line of cars, and
they hand you your diploma?
You would get out of the car with the mask on. You would go and you would get your diploma.
That's the saddest shit I've ever heard in my life.
Take a little picture and then drive away.
Do you feel robbed of high school experiences or no, because you were using anyways?
Yeah, no, because I fucking hated high school.
Okay.
I fucking hated it. I had a lot of like also like body image issues
You did.
in high school and a lot of like, you know, outside issues as well. Like I am definitely diagnosed with depression, anxiety, and you know, PMDD. And
oh, that's right. You wanted to talk about that too.
Yeah.
So
that didn't actually come up as much until I got sober.
Okay. Okay, we can talk about that then.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I'll get to that.
Okay.
But you know, I had a lot of mental health issues as well and everything with my dad, and I was just also didn't respect myself, and I just really hated myself. I hated my looks. I thought I was the ugliest person in the fucking universe, and like inside and out. I thought I was a terrible person inside and out. And I really believed that. And after all of that went on, like I had a lot of drama go on in high school. I had lost about 60 pounds at one point from really bad depression. And there were a bunch of rumors in my high school that I had bulimia.
Oh, gosh.
And people would ask me about it.
Of course.
And so I fucking hated high school.
Okay.
So I didn't even care.
Okay.
And like I said, I don't fucking remember
That's wild.
doing classes online.
It had to have been.
I guess so. I mean, it had to.
Well, yeah, March 20th of 2020 is when California shut down, because that's when I had to shut down my business. So you definitely weren't, you would never have gone back to school. So you must have finished online, unless maybe you had enough credits that you got to graduate, you know, who knows?
I definitely didn't get to graduate early because I was barely passing my classes.
Okay.
I guess I probably did it online. I really still can't remember.
Yeah.
And it kills me because I want to remember.
You know what's so interesting is that the people that I interview that have done a lot of Xanax, there are these massive blank spots in their memories, like my heroin addicts, my meth addicts, my alcoholics, like they'll remember stuff. The Xanax people, it's gone.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
And
like I get it. I mean, that wasn't I didn't do anything. I fucking hated Xanax unless I was kicking dope. It's the only time I've had any use for it.
Yeah.
But like I've heard that from so many people. There's just, it's just gone, those memories.
Yeah. And I loved that.
Yeah.
I fucking loved that shit. I didn't want to remember a thing about anything. And like the only things that I do remember like from the last 2 years was like the very pivotal moments, you know, like my dad getting arrested, my boyfriend dying. But like I have so many gaps in growing up, and I think it probably is a combination of my using and of my
PTSD.
Trauma and PTSD.
Yeah, for sure.
I suppressed a lot of stuff.
So was there any talk of you going to college, or did you just graduate and stay there and keep working?
So when I graduated, I was at the point that my mom had forced me into an adolescent IOP center.
Okay.
I was there for like a year because I was there until I turned 18 because I kept relapsing.
Okay.
And I thought that I was cooler than everybody else because most of the people there were like 14 and they were there because they were smoking weed and their moms sent them there. So I thought that made me cool.
Right.
And like we had family groups on the weekend and like we would have to say how many days sober we were. And my like counselor wouldn't let me say sober because I was still smoking weed.
Okay.
Because I was trying to do marijuana maintenance.
Right.
And one time this one mom goes, Ashley, every single week, you say that you're 4 days off Xanax.
That's hilarious.
And I was like, fuck you.
Yeah.
Like, pay attention to your fucking kids.
Yeah, that's really funny.
But it's like, that's literally the like insanity of my disease was that I tried to do marijuana maintenance for 7 months. And the longest that I fucking went was 4 fucking days.
Yeah.
And so like, I didn't want to be sober at the time. I just was there because my mom forced me to. And then I like kind of started going to meetings. Wasn't really like, I was 1 foot out the door. I was a chronic fucking relapser.
Yeah.
I would like go up and I would take a newcomer chip like every fucking 2 weeks.
Yeah. Did you have a good connection with 12-step? Like, was your idea of it a good thing because you had been raised in the rooms, or did you think it didn't work because look what happened to my dad?
I had faith in the program.
You did? Okay.
I just didn't have faith in myself.
Okay.
So
Or him.
Right. So I believed that the program worked.
Okay.
But I also believed that it wasn't going to work for me.
You've probably heard, I've said that before. Like, when people take time, they'll often say, I thought all y'all motherfuckers were lying. It's like one of the 12-step jokes that everybody makes.
Yeah.
And I'm like, I didn't think that. I believed every person.
Exactly.
But I didn't think it would work for me.
Exactly.
Because it wasn't.
Yeah, it just didn't work because I wasn't fucking working. And of course, I know that now, you know.
Yeah.
I was like, I'm not powerless over anything.
Right.
Like, I could stop if I want to.
Right.
Obviously, I fucking couldn't. Like, the fact that before the age of 18, I was hospitalized maybe like 6 times from all the seizures and then from other health issues that stem from my using. And I had already fucking gotten detained and almost arrested and all of this shit. Like, I was fucking powerless as shit, but I was not ready to admit that.
Yeah.
And so I would go to these meetings. I would go to my IOP. I would like share. I would lie about my time. I would like not tell anybody I was still smoking weed. Like, I was just not being honest. And of course, that was one of the biggest reasons why it didn't work, which I know now. And so I was kind of just doing that whole workaround. And it was just all the time me going in and out, in and out, in and out, sharing at meetings when I was high, everyone knowing I was high and like asking me, and I would lie, of course. And then I would also see a lot of people at those meetings that saw me grow up because of my dad.
Oh, yeah.
So people would come up to me and they would ask me how my dad was doing. And a lot of them even said, your dad saved my life. I hope he's okay.
Wow.
And that broke me because it was like seeing the good things that he had done was like one positive thing that I held on to. But it was so heartbreaking.
Yeah.
To constantly like get that question and know what was going on.
Yeah.
And he had, of course, been gambling as well. They go hand in hand for him.
Being reminded of the memory of something you used to have is very difficult.
It is so difficult. And I'm still struggling with that a lot.
Yeah.
Now. But yeah, so
did he go back to prison for the smuggling?
So he did end up going to jail.
Okay.
So I turned 18. A few days before I turned 18, I relapsed again. I was at a poker party and I was fucking high off my ass. I thought that it wasn't noticeable. I thought that I could get away with it. It was a party where all of my AA friends had their kids there too.
Okay.
And I was very familiar with all of the kids there. And so, like, even the kids fucking noticed that I was fucked up.
That's funny.
And so I'm, like, at this poker game, and, like, I just remember people are like, Ashley, you're fucked up. I'm like, I don't know what the fuck you're talking about.
Yeah.
Finally, they're like, okay, you gotta go. But the great thing about the program, and this reminds me how amazing it is and how, like, we don't shoot our wounded. Somebody drove me home.
Yeah.
They could have put me on my ass. I wouldn't have blamed them.
Yeah.
Somebody drove me home and they said, I love you. You need to get help. And that was the last thing that they said before I got out of the car. And so 3 days later, I was 18. On my 18th birthday, I sat on my couch by myself, crying because I didn't want to get high anymore as I was getting high. That was probably like something that I always look back at that like truly shows I'm fucking powerless.
Yeah.
And like I was crying because I didn't want to do what I was doing, but I was still fucking doing it.
Yeah.
I didn't think I had a choice. And so I just continued. And like eventually, maybe like 3 weeks after I turned 18, one day I was upstairs, I was in the bathroom, and I was just crying my eyes out. And even though I had said that I wanted to die before 18, I realized, obviously, I'm still here. That didn't happen. What the fuck do I do? And I got down on my knees and I said, like, I am so done. Like, God, please fucking help me. Crying my eyes out on the floor. And a few days later, I decided to go to treatment. And so I went to a detox facility, Laguna Treatment Hospital.
Okay.
I was there for 3 weeks. I was like secretarying every AA meeting there. I was really excited. I was on a pink cloud, but I wanted to go back home.
Okay.
And they said, you should go to sober living. You should go to IOP. And I didn't listen. And so I went home. And 6 days later, I was back at that same detox. And they said, I thought you were so excited. What happened? And I didn't know how to answer that because I don't know what happened.
Yeah.
And I didn't. And now I do. It was like me not turning my will over, not admitting that I'm powerless. And so, of course, the obsession kicked in.
Yeah.
And like after going back to that place, I decided, fuck, I need to like do something different. But I was still kind of 1 foot out the door.
Okay.
And I was terrified because I was 18. I didn't have a job at that time. I had quit McDonald's. My dad was doing what he was doing. I like had barely graduated high school, and like I didn't even think about going to like college or anything because I didn't care.
Yeah.
And it was just like I was terrified, but I was more terrified of what would happen if I kept using.
Okay.
And like even though I knew at that time that I was powerless, like I was kind of still 1 foot out the door. And so I went to an IOP PHP program. At this IOP program, I met this guy, and he was 27. I was freshly 18. Fucking creepy. I met this guy, and he looked and acted just like my boyfriend that died.
Okay.
He literally, like, I thought it was like a fucking reincarnation. Like,
okay.
And so I started seeing him, and I was like, I didn't get to save Trevor. I'm going to save this dude.
Wow.
And he would look at me every single day, tell me he was still in love with his ex. He would try to tell me what to wear. He would get mad at me for everything. He got mad at me once I was texting my uncle, but I didn't have my uncle's phone number saved as uncle. And so he thought I was lying. And then there was one day where my roommates in my sober living were watching Breaking Bad, and I was on FaceTime with him. And he's like, who's there?
Oh my
and I'm like,
gosh.
It's Breaking Bad. And he's like, I've seen Breaking Bad. I've never heard that before.
Oh my
and I'm
gosh.
like, you know every fucking minute of Breaking Bad, like all the seasons? Turns out he was on meth that day.
Okay.
It makes so much fucking sense now.
Right. Oh my gosh.
I stayed in that relationship because 1, I didn't think I deserved more.
Yeah.
And 2, he was like somebody that I was trying to save. I wanted to save him. I literally acted as if he was Trevor, my boyfriend.
If we zoom out a little, do you think you're trying to save your dad too by saving these men?
Yeah. I honestly, oh my God, I've never thought of that before.
You never have?
No.
Okay.
I mean, I always knew that like I had this codependency attachment to men in my life that I care about because of my dad, but I never thought about it the way that you just described it.
It's like your chance to save him over and over.
Yeah. Wow. Fuck. Yeah.
Yeah.
I am so glad you said that because I never looked at it that way. But absolutely.
Well, it's interesting to me because as you tell your story today, it was your dad's story.
Yeah. And yeah.
Yeah. The whole story is his arrest, his use.
Yeah.
And that's like your story is so intertwined with his.
Yeah.
And I noticed that because I was talking to my mom once. I was single again. And I was like, I don't want to date somebody again. And then I have to tell him that you know, dad left and then, you know, my brother almost died in this accident. And I don't want to sit there and tell us another guy all these stories. And my mom was like, Janine, that's not your story though.
Yeah.
That's their
Absolutely.
story. And it like blew my mind. And I just noticed that like while you were talking, you know?
Yeah.
But like,
I hope that, I mean, I can see that. Yeah. I just like, I didn't look at it as that way.
yeah.
But now I'm thinking about it and it's like, you are right. I hope that it's like still, like you can still, or the viewers can still like see my story and hear my story.
Well, no, we of course we can because it. No, it is still your story. It is still your story,
Okay.
and I don't mean that like in a that it's not your story way.
No, I know.
That's just how you look at your life. Your life is also a reflection of him. The relationship is really intertwined.
Yeah.
But what's beautiful to me, and we'll get there, is that you have done so much healing. You're obviously not trying to save Jacob. Jacob doesn't need you to save him.
No, he doesn't.
You know what I mean? He's a very independent, smart, driven guy. Like you've done a lot of that healing already, which I think is really great. It just struck me right now when you were talking about, you know, this guy.
No, I mean, yeah, absolutely. Like, I think that was like one of the things. It's like I was trying to save all of these people that I couldn't save.
Totally.
And this guy was constantly in and out, you know, shooting up, disappearing for days. I would call the jails, all the hospitals trying to find him. And then he would text me a week later and pretend like everything was okay. And I would just say, oh my God, I'm glad you're alive. And I would stay with him.
Yeah.
And then there was one day where he was not in treatment at this time. He was sober. And I had been maybe like 80 days sober. And I went with my mom to go and visit my grandma, my dad's mom. And I opened up her medicine cabinet and there was a bottle of Ambien. And at this point, I had been kicked out of the first program that I went to because they found out I was dating that guy.
Okay.
And they sent me to an all-women's facility. And that was where I relapsed. And so I had never taken Ambien before. I just knew it would get me fucked up. I like slipped 4 of them in my pocket. I was going to take 2 at that time, 2 the next day. I took all 4, of course. And when I woke up the next morning in my bed, not remembering how I got up to my bed, I knew I was fucked.
Ambien is so serious.
I knew I was fucked.
I love Ambien.
Come to find out, I fucking fell down the stairs. And they had to fucking carry me to my room.
Oh my God.
And they're all mad at me. And I'm like, why are you guys mad at me? Like, I just took too much Seroquel. Like, what the fuck is wrong with you?
Right.
And like, they're all fucking pissed. And I didn't get it. And I get it now, of course. And so it's like, I was jeopardizing other people's recovery in that house. And I was lying about it.
Yeah.
And then they drug tested me. Of course, they saw the fucking Ambien. And they said, if you would have been honest, we wouldn't kick you out, but we're going to transfer you. So the whole Ambien situation occurred. For whatever reason, I finally just like broke it off with that guy. And I ended up at a different facility. So this is my 3rd facility in Orange County within the span of like 6 months.
Okay.
I got there.
And how old are you now when you get there?
I was still 18.
Okay.
Almost 19. So I end up going to another place, another PHP program, and, you know, the cycle continues. I meet another guy.
Okay.
And so I started dating this guy, and I actually had a situation where his friend, I had like hooked up with his friend when I was high, and his friend recorded me without my knowledge. And my ex-boyfriend, who I ended up dating, was very close friends with him, and he knew and he didn't tell me.
Oh my gosh.
And so I'm dating this guy. And like I said, I didn't have any type of self-respect or self-worth. Eventually, when I found out that my boyfriend at the time knew that happened and didn't tell me, I still stayed with him. And then the other guy started going around and like saying that I was being passed around the rooms.
Oh my gosh.
That I was ugly, that I was a whore, like this nasty shit. And my ex stayed friends with him. He stayed friends with him, and he actually would make me hang out with them together. Wow. And this guy was like fucking harassing me. That was like another moment where I was just trying to kind of save somebody again.
Yeah.
And then I had a situation with my ex where one of our friends had relapsed. This friend of mine we had the same sobriety date. He grew up in the Valley too, and we were very close. And he relapsed. And then one night called me, and he was in a hotel room, and he was shooting up. And I was like, I don't want you to die. I don't want you to die. Where are you? He sent me the address of the motel he was at, and we were going to go and help him. And then on the way there, we realized we both have like 30 days sober. We can't fucking show up at this motel where they are using.
Yeah.
So we didn't go. And then the next morning I got a call and he was dead.
Oh my gosh.
And I took responsibility for that as well.
Yeah.
Because I didn't go.
Yeah.
And I actually ended up getting pretty close with his parents. This tattoo is in honor of him.
Okay.
And that was just another time I tried to save somebody. And that was another time that I, you know, was trying to like look at anything but myself. And so my ex and I like both felt bad, but like I think that I felt worse.
Yeah.
Like I felt more of the guilt.
That's pretty insightful what you just said. This savior complex also allows you to not look at yourself.
Oh, fuck yeah. That was like the biggest thing. Like it was, of course, you know, like you said, it was stuff with my dad as well. I was trying to save people because I wanted to save him. But I also was just trying to avoid anything surrounding my own issues, my own addiction.
Totally.
And so I, of course, you know, they say don't get into a relationship within your first year. I didn't fucking listen.
Yeah.
And I stayed in this relationship even after finding out about the video of me and this guy having sex. And
Did that guy ever do anything with that video?
I hope not.
Okay.
I don't think so.
Okay. Other than show it to people that you guys both know?
Yeah. He actually showed it to my ex-boyfriend the night that he took the video, knowing that my ex-boyfriend had a crush on me.
Oh my gosh.
So, like, he was not even a fucking good friend.
Yeah.
But,
asshole.
yeah.
Okay.
And, like, I mean, I'm just going to say this now. It wasn't even good, Janine. Like, it was terrible. So, like, maybe that's why he didn't fucking, like, send it out. It was bad.
Yeah.
I was bored.
Yeah.
But yeah, so like I'm in this relationship and it's already tumultuous. Within the first fucking month, we're arguing constantly. My dad ended up going into jail finally. And so my dad was in jail. My friend had just passed away. And I was in this new relationship. And again, the treatment center that I was at found out that I was dating my ex and they kicked me out.
Okay.
And sent me to a women's facility again, a different one. And this place is in Huntington Beach, called Anchored Tides Recovery, and it's the place that saved me. And I got there, and when I got there, I was a fucking menace. I didn't think that any rules applied to me. I never did my chores. I stole people's food. I stole people's, like, belongings and used them without asking, and then, of course, lied about it. And there was one time where my house manager noticed that there was, like, oil at the bottom of her shower, like her tub. And it was because I had taken a bath and poured olive oil in the bath. And it was her olive oil too.
Right.
So she sends a picture in the group chat. And everybody's like, Ashley, we know that was you. And I denied it. I denied. But at that place, they also, like, didn't fucking fall for my bullshit. And I had never had anybody not take my bullshit. Because I grew up with my mom, and my mom would give in to shit.
Yeah.
She would believe my lies, or at least pretend to believe them. So I remember when I got to that place, I'm sitting across from my case manager that I had just met. And I am screaming. And I'm not a yeller. Like, I hate yelling because of, you know, my past and my traumas. But I'm screaming. I'm like, I don't want to fucking be here. Like, you have to fucking transfer me. Because I couldn't leave because I didn't have anywhere to go. But I didn't want to, like, be at that place because I was scared of women.
Yeah.
I was scared of women. That was the biggest reason.
Okay.
And she looks at me and she goes, no. And then I start trying to, like, take matters into my own hands. I start calling random treatment centers, and every single time they would ask me where I was currently. And I would tell them, they would say, oh, okay, we'll have your case manager call because we're only going to accept a transfer if they think you're fit for that, because we know that place. It's a good place.
Okay.
And for 3 days, every day I would go into the office, would sit in front of my case manager and the director, and I would scream and cry and scream and cry. And then during my biopsychosocial, the first assessment they do when you get into treatment, like the really lengthy one, 2 things stuck out. One, I said to my case manager, even in a room full of people, I always feel alone. And then also she had told me, based on my history, she was excited to work with me. And she was excited to, like, see my journey. And so I told her she was selfish. And, like, I thought that was why she didn't want to transfer me anywhere. So I literally screamed at her and I was like, you just want to fucking work with me. Like, fuck you, you're selfish.
Oh, my gosh.
And so, like, eventually I, like, gave in.
Yeah.
And then I was still a menace in the house. None of the girls liked me. They fucking despised me for good reason. I played victim. But I also was in this new relationship that I would always talk about in group, and I wouldn't talk about any serious shit because, again, I didn't want to look inward.
Yeah.
I would talk about the very fucking surface level shit.
Yeah.
So I wasn't making connections because I wasn't respecting the people around me, and I wasn't talking about my real shit. I was talking about my relationship. I didn't even mention to anybody for months that my dad was in jail.
Yeah.
And you just heard, like, that is a huge fucking part of my story.
Yeah.
But I just was so terrified I had to guard up. So I started getting in trouble there. There was one time where I was on complete lockdown for 72 hours because I wasn't doing my chores and my room was a mess. And they took my phone too. And that happened a couple times. And they, of course, had me sign like a contract and they were going to kick me out if it happened again. But then my best friend, Polina, arrived. And she got there a day after she turned 18. So we were the youngest. And I immediately clicked with her. And I felt safe. And I know for a fact she's my platonic soulmate.
Yeah.
And when I met her, it was just like instant connection. And I remember telling my therapist, this girl is my best friend. She's going to be my best friend. But I'm scared because everybody that I love either dies or leaves. And her and I had both moved from home. You know, she was from DC. And we had so much in common. And so we immediately clicked. And for whatever reason, because of that, I started being able to open up in group.
Okay.
Because her and I gave each other, like, that strength and, like, loved each other because we couldn't love ourselves at the time. And I ended up actually getting my house moved to a different sober living within the same treatment center because of wreaking havoc. But they put her as my roommate because they knew it would be good for us. And it was.
Yeah.
And we just clicked and, like, we did everything together. Like, she was my rock, I was her rock. And, like, she helped me feel less ashamed of opening up about my issues. And at the time, I was also doing EMDR therapy in treatment.
Yeah.
And then one day, I was with Polina, and she was just the brightest soul. She, like, always dyed her hair a bunch of fun colors. And she was so outspoken and not afraid of anything. And I admired that, and I wanted to be like her in that sense. And she was so strong. But she was just, it's impossible to not like her. Like, she was one of those kind of people. Like, she was just amazing. Even in her dark moments, she was so happy. Like, would put off that she was happy, you know? But, like, I did see her become, like, truly, truly happy when she was in treatment. And, like, you know, we started to, like, both have our own separate journeys, but we were doing it together in that way. And I felt like things were starting to make sense because I felt like I had somebody who I related to. And then one day I was with her. I was working in a tanning salon at the time. I fucking hated it. People are assholes.
Yeah.
In fucking Orange County.
For sure.
Oh my God.
Like an eye tan or something?
It was called Palm Beach Tan.
Okay.
Yeah. I fucking hated it.
Yeah.
But she was coming to work with me, get tanned. And we were about to walk in. And all of a sudden, she starts having a seizure. And she drops on the floor, has a seizure. It takes about a minute for her to gain consciousness again. I grabbed her phone. I found her dad's number in her phone. I called her dad and told him what was going on. And then she didn't want to go to the ER because of the cost of the ambulance, which is unfortunate that was, like, what happened. And the EMTs said to me, she's not going. And I was like, can I talk to her? So I get into the ambulance and I look at her and I go, Polina, your dad wants you to go. He knows what happened. I'm going to meet you there. You're going. She was like, okay. And I got out of the ambulance and they're like, what do you mean she's going? I'm like, she's going. She's going. It's okay. So I was doing EMDR on that situation at the time because it was really traumatic because I thought that she was dead.
Yeah.
I thought
you've had a lot of death in your life. What gave her the seizure, or do you find out later?
We actually still don't know.
Okay.
She had a relapse about 2 months prior to that.
But she wasn't high, and that's why she had the seizure.
Maybe.
You don't know.
We don't know.
Okay.
We still don't know.
Okay.
And we also still don't know how that could contribute, later.
Okay.
So that happened, and when she relapsed, she was like living with this boyfriend who was her drug dealer.
When did she relapse after that? How much longer?
It was before that.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, about a month before that. Okay. Sorry, I'm like all over the
place.
No,
you're not.
So when she relapsed, I got pulled out of group and they were like, hey, someone wants to talk to you. And I went in there and she was crying. And she was like, Ashley, like I relapsed. Because she had broken up with that boyfriend that she was living with who used to be her drug dealer and got a hotel that night. And I actually stayed with her at the hotel until curfew. And I was worried that she was going to drink. And I said to her, I was like, well, why didn't you pick up the phone or come home the next day? And she goes, because even though I relapsed, I didn't want to be drunk around you because I didn't want to jeopardize your recovery. And we sat down and I was like, it's okay. Because she thought I was going to be upset with her. And I was like, it's okay. I was a chronic relapser. So then she went to detox and came back. And then about a month after she came back was when she had the seizure. But that was the first time I ever talked to her dad because I just called him because I didn't know what to do.
Yeah.
And then in September of 2021, almost 3 years ago, it was my sister's birthday. And I went down to LA to see my family. And while I'm down there with my ex at the time, I get a phone call from my house manager and she's like, we have an emergency house meeting within the hour. So you have to get here. And I was like, there's no way I'm going to make it. It's Labor Day. I'm in LA. And she was like, no, you have to. We need you to come here at 5. And I was like, I'm not going to make it. They were like, okay, we'll call you back. Get off the phone. My mom looks at me. My mom says, why don't you call Polina and see if she knows? I call Polina. She doesn't answer. I start to get uneasy. And then they call back and they say, hey, is your mom there? And I was like, yeah, my mom's there. And they're like, can we talk to her? And I handed my mom the phone and she walked out of the room and I looked at my ex and I said, somebody's dead. And he was like, no, you're just overthinking. I was like, no, somebody's dead. And like something in my mind told me like Polina's dead. And I hear my mom pacing back and forth upstairs. And she comes into the room and she's crying. And she said, it's exactly what you were afraid of. And I just remember sitting there bawling my eyes out. And all I could say for an hour and a half, rocking back and forth on the couch crying, was, God, please no, God, please no, God, please no. And my social worker ended up calling me about an hour later, my case manager. And she goes, they're having the emergency house meeting. But I told them that I didn't want you to find out in that and that I wanted to be the one to tell you. And I thought at that moment that she had died from an overdose because that's what you expect.
Right.
And then she starts crying and she says, our beautiful Polina died sober in the place she loved the most. And that was when I found out that she drowned in the ocean at Corona Del Mar Beach. And
what happened?
We still don't know. We think she could have had a seizure, but we don't know. We still don't know.
Was she with anyone?
Yes. So she was with another girl from our house.
Okay.
From our sober living. And actually, I was invited.
Okay.
And I remember before I left for LA, I had found like these incense that her and I had bought in my ex's car. And I called her and I said, hey, do you want to come down and grab them? And she was like, no, I'm playing Minecraft. And I was like, well, I want to say bye. And she's like, well, just come up here. And like, I just wanted to say goodbye for the day. Yeah. And I go up there and I give her a hug and I'm like, I love you. I'll see you later. And they're going to the beach. And I knew they were going to the beach. And thank God my last words to her were that I loved her. But apparently, Polina loved to swim. She was a great swimmer. We took surfing lessons through our treatment center. We went to the beach a lot. She body surfed. She was very much an adrenaline junkie as well. And I guess that The other girl only went in about knee high, and Polina had gone in completely all the way because she wanted to body surf. And after a few minutes, the other girl noticed that she couldn't see Polina anymore.
Oh my gosh.
And she looked up at the lifeguard. And as she looked at the lifeguard started coming down the tower because he realized he couldn't see her either. And they found her and they took her out of the water, and she was DOA. And they had said that she was out of oxygen for 8 minutes before they pulled her out of the water. So it took a long time.
Yeah.
I was really angry at that as well.
Yeah.
But my case manager told me, like, she loved the ocean because she did. It was her higher power was the beach and the ocean. And she was like, I'm so sorry. Like, I'm so sorry. And we just sat and we just cried. And I said, I can't come home because I knew if I went home, I was going to go home to a room full of her stuff and she wasn't going to be there. So I stayed with my family. The next day, the grief started to really hit me.
Yeah.
Because I was in shock at first. And I was alone. My grandma was in her room with the door closed. My sister was at work. My mom was at work. And I decided that I was going to use. I had 6 months sober. I took my phone out. I was like, perfect. I'm in LA. This is where I used. I have all my dealers' phone numbers. I'm going to call someone. So I take my phone out, and right as I'm about to do it, something tells me, like, get on your fucking knees and pray. Just do it. And the only time that I had ever gotten down on my knees to pray was when I was surrendering that one day, when I was finally, like, realized that I was done. So, like, the 2 times that I've gotten down on my knees to pray have been 2 very fucking big spiritual experiences.
Yeah, okay.
And so it was like kind of like a parallel in a way.
Yeah.
But I got down on my knees. I tried to pray to God, but I was so fucking mad.
Yeah.
So mad because it didn't make sense to me. She was 18. She was about to go away to college. Like, she was doing amazing. She was happy.
Yeah.
She was happy. She had gone through so much shit in her life, and she was sober and happy. So I was mad.
Yeah.
So I prayed to her instead.
Okay.
And I said, Polina, I don't know what to do. I can't do this without you. Please help me. And I stood up, and it was like a switch flipped. And I just didn't want to get high. And I was like, I can't fucking do that. I can't do that shit.
Yeah.
Like, that's the last thing that she would want me to do. And so I didn't. And then 5 minutes later, I get a call from my case manager. She says, hey, Polina's dad and grandma wanted to talk to you. Can I give them your phone number? I said, of course. And they call me, and we all cry together. And they say, thank you for helping her. Like, it was so hard for us when she went away, but you really helped her, and thank you. She was happy. And we just all sat there and cried. And then her dad said, hey, so we're having a funeral next month in DC. Can I buy you a plane ticket? And I said, of course. And I say yes. And, like, I had always heard of people seeing their loved ones in their dreams after they passed.
Yeah.
And I really wanted that. And so every single day for about a week after she died, I would go home, sit on my bed facing her bed, and I would just talk.
Yeah.
As if I was talking to her, because that's what we did every single night when I got home from work. And I would light our incense, light our candles, and, like, just talk. And every single time I would talk to her, I would ask her to visit me. And I didn't believe that, like, that was actually something that happened, but I just wanted it so badly. And then I had a dream one night. And in my dream, she showed up, and I said, I thought that you were dead. I thought you were gone. And very on par for her, she makes a joke about the government. She goes, I faked my death because I didn't want to pay taxes in my dream. And it's so something that she would say. And she was like, no, I mean, like, I did die, but I'm here. And I was like, but you're not here. And she was like, Ashley, I'm here. And I was like, what do you mean by that, Polina? Like, you're not here. What do you mean? And she just kept saying, I'm here. And I said, I need to know, like, are you happy? Like, are you okay? And she looked at me and she said, Ashley, I'm doing amazing. I am so happy.
Oh.
Just keep doing what you're doing. And I'm always here. And then she gave me a hug in my dream, told me she loved me, and said, I gotta go. I'm gonna go visit my sister. She had a little sister. And I still to this day believe it was her.
Yeah.
Because I've never had vivid dreams.
Yeah.
Like, dreams are never that vivid. And the whole thing, I still to this day, 3 years later, remember it. And that was all the confirmation that I needed, because I just wanted to know that she was okay.
Yeah.
And so I went out to the funeral. I met her family, and I had written her a letter. And I had asked her dad if I could bury the letter with her, and he said yes. And she didn't have an open casket funeral, but after the main funeral service, they gave her family about 10 minutes with her body to say goodbye. And so they actually asked me if I wanted to stay in there and say goodbye as well with the family. And I said yes, because I wanted to put the letter in. And as soon as they opened the casket and I looked at her, it was like a wax figure. Like, and I just broke down. It broke down, and I wasn't expecting to, like, I was expecting to see her, but I wasn't expecting that.
Yeah.
I don't know what I expected.
Yeah.
But I was just bawling, and I could barely look at her, and I put the letter in her casket, and I said, I love you, and I kind of backed away. And then, you know, at her burial, everybody was just sobbing, crying, and, like, my biggest fear going out there, and such a, like, a selfish fear, was that people were going to see me upset and be like, who the fuck is this random girl that we've never met?
Right.
Why are you crying? But instead, every single person I met, her friends from high school, her cousins, her family members, extended family members said, oh my God, you're Ashley.
Oh.
Poe talked about you all the time.
Yeah.
And that was just like something that really showed me that, like, I was a valuable human being, because I didn't think that I had any friendships of value.
Yeah.
And that's why our friendship was so special, because I valued her and she valued me. And, like, being able to, like, talk to all of these family members and, like, have, like, my life, like, her life from California and her life from DC merge in a way.
Yeah.
And I stayed there for a week. Her and her cousins were best friends, and we got very close. We went around exploring every day, and I became best friends with them as well. And that was a pivotal moment, too. And her grandma also had told me something and brought up a memory of when Polina's ex-boyfriend had broken up with her, and I saw him on the street with another girl 2 days later, and I tracked him down, and he was scared of me. And this is, like, he's a fucking ex-drug dealer.
Yeah.
And he was scared of me.
Yeah.
I'm not scary,
Yeah.
but I was scary for her.
Yeah.
And
yeah.
her grandma told me about it, and she's this little firecracker. I love her. And she was like, you scared the shit out of that motherfucker. And she was like, but seriously, like, you saved Poe. Thank you. And she gave me a hug, and we all cried. And then the day before I flew back, I was talking to her dad, and he said, hey, so I have an idea. And I was like, what's up? And he was like, I just posted a GoFundMe page to raise money in honor of Polina to help women get treatment. And our original goal was $5,000. And I looked at him, and I just saw this man who just lost his daughter 1 month ago. And he's already wanting to help other people in her honor. And that's exactly how she was.
Yeah.
And I, like, that was just amazing to me. And he ended up becoming my father figure. My dad was still in jail.
Yeah.
And so we decided to post this GoFundMe page. We didn't know how we were going to allocate the money. Obviously, we thought it was going to be only about $5,000. We didn't know if it was even going to work, if people were even going to donate. Like, we just did it. And within 2 fucking months, we had $50,000 saved.
That's crazy.
And the fact that, like, in 2 months that happened is so crazy to me, and it's such a fucking god shot. And the fact that I didn't use when I wanted to is the only reason why I picked up the phone to my case manager, and the only reason why I got involved in that. Because if I would have, even if I wasn't using yet and I would have called my dealer prior to that, I still wouldn't have picked up the phone.
Right.
And so we continued to talk about the scholarship fund, and we were trying to figure out exactly what we were going to do and how we were going to do it. And he ended up, so I was actually supposed to graduate from my treatment center 2 weeks after Polina died. And my treatment center, fucking amazing. They're amazing people. They said, you can stay as long as you need. We don't want you to relapse.
Yeah.
And so I stayed for another 3 months.
Okay.
And so in January of 2022, I had about 11 months sober. Her dad flew out for my graduation.
Oh.
And I had told my therapist that I was going to write a letter to Polina, read it out loud at my graduation, and I was going to put a picture of her on a chair so that she could be there. But I walked into the room and there was a chair sitting there, and my therapist had made me a shirt, and she said, "You don't need a picture." And she put the shirt up on the chair. And it was of Polina. And I cried, and I read that letter out loud, and everybody in that room, we all just grieved together. But I felt her there. Like, I genuinely did. And then her dad and I ended up going out to eat. And then we were like, you know what? Fuck it. Let's get tattoos. We got tattoos.
Yeah.
And so he got her name in Russian, and I got it in English with her birth and death date and this little flower. And we started talking more about how we were going to like do this whole scholarship fund thing. And this has been almost 3 years in the making.
Yeah.
And we like had no idea what we were going to do. We were kind of like just going off of blind faith in a way.
Yeah.
Of like how we were going to end up actually being able to like allocate this money, help people, and like all of that shit. And then we started having like some meetings with the program directors from my old treatment center, with him and some of his family members and some of his friends who were like in the like different, you know, career fields that could help us in different ways. And all of a sudden one day, like, he tells me, he goes, "Ashley, by the way, like, I bought a plane ticket on February 7th. I'm going to come and I'm going to give you a token for your 1 year."
Wow.
And he's done that every year. He came out this February and gave me a 3-year token as well. And when he came out there, he said to me, he was like, "So I figured out what we're going to do." And we found a treatment center, because my program director had ended up working in a different treatment center. And that treatment center is for women and children.
Okay.
It's called New Directions for Women. And he said, they're going to match our donations.
Whoa.
And I was like, so that means that we already have fucking $50 or $100,000? Like,
that's
they're
crazy.
giving us 50?
Wow.
And I was just like in shock.
Yeah.
And he was like, yeah, they're matching our donations. And then we were still kind of just trying to figure out what the fuck to do and like how we were going to do it. And like one day he calls me and he goes, "Hey, I have a question." And I was like, "Yeah, what's up?" He was like, "Actually, I have two. One, will you be an official board member of the Polina White Scholarship Foundation?" And I started crying and I was like, "I'd be honored to." And he was like, "And two, we want to have a fundraising event. We're going to have a gala. Will you come out? I'll fly you out. And will you speak and share your story?" And I did.
Yeah.
And that was very recent. That was in June, the end of June.
Okay.
But, you know, through all of my grieving of her death, I was really going through it in a lot of ways. And the biggest reason I think why I was able to stay sober and to stay like emotionally kind of okay in those moments was because of my treatment center, Polina's family, and of course the program and my sponsor.
Yeah.
But my ex had basically told me over and over again that I should be done grieving, that she didn't even, like, that she died a long time ago, that I didn't even know her that long, and that it was bringing his mood down. So I didn't think I was safe talking about something that was so pivotal with this person who's supposed to be my partner.
Yeah.
And he told me all of this stuff, and, like, that was another thing that I stayed through.
Yeah.
Another thing. And then we were just arguing all the time, but he would always use her death against me. And, like, you know, I had a lot of toxic behaviors as well, for sure, because I wasn't working my program to the extent that, thank God, I'm working it now. But I kind of just ignored my grief for a little bit. And so I think that creating the scholarship fund helped me grieve.
Yeah.
And Polina became my higher power. She still is to this day. But the treatment center that I was at, when they like allowed me to stay, that was just another moment of me realizing how amazing something like that is. because they scholarshiped me to let me stay.
Right.
And it was like me realizing like this is what we can do for people.
Yeah.
And that treatment center actually is what motivated me to get into this field of work because I work in treatment. I'm working on getting my KDAC.
So how do you guys choose women to get the scholarship?
Through New Directions.
Oh, okay. They pick people.
Yeah.
Okay. The treatment center.
Yes.
Okay.
And so I finished my treatment center and like being in there, and I'm going to go back for a second because when I was in the detox place that I went to for the very first time, I was sitting with about a group of people. I had just gotten there, and I said to them, if anything good comes out of me having this shitty disease, I want it to be that I can help people, because I saw my dad help people.
Yeah.
And then seeing my case manager, my therapist, the way that they transformed their lives because they were in recovery.
Yeah.
And I never felt safe opening up with any therapists until them.
Yeah.
Because they knew.
Yeah.
They knew how it was.
Yeah.
And that was when I said, holy fucking shit, I want to do this.
Yeah.
Like, this is my dream. I want to see people's lives transform. Because, like, they fucking saved my life.
Yeah.
And, like, I go back there every year and I speak on my birthdays to the women there. But
where do you work right now?
So right now I actually work at Villa Colima in Rancho Santa Fe.
Oh, right. Yeah. Okay.
Before that, I worked at Casa Palmera for almost 2 years.
Okay.
That was where I started working in treatment.
And you want to get your KDAC and be a therapist or a counselor or whatever?
Fuck yeah.
Okay.
And, like, for me, like, it has always been a thing in my mind where I don't say I want to do this as a career. I say I'm going to do this as a career.
Okay.
And that is because I really do know that this is like my job in this life.
Yeah.
And I never thought that I would actually help people.
Yeah.
And so working in treatment was amazing, like when I first got that job. But then with the scholarship fund, it was even more special because I don't earn income from that.
Right.
I get to do that on my free time with people that I love.
Yeah.
And I get to do it solely because I want to help people and solely because Polina would do the same exact thing.
Yeah.
And so now that we've kind of like started with all of that, after the gala event, we actually ended up having $76,000 raised.
Wow.
And when I went up there and spoke, I was terrified. I was kind of like pausing in my speaking a lot, kind of like how I've been doing here.
You actually haven't been, I don't think.
Oh, really?
No.
Okay.
I'm pausing you occasionally to tell you to stop moving your hands, but you're not pausing.
I feel like it's so obvious how nervous I am right now.
It's really not. It's really not. It's really not.
It's self-centered.
Yeah.
Fuck.
Well, I think you need to cut yourself a little bit of slack with that, but I understand where you're coming from with that.
Yeah. And so I went up there and I was terrified and I thought that I did a terrible job. And it turns out that because I was vulnerable and I cried up there and it was authentic, it touched people even more. Yeah. And so what I thought was a weakness in that speech ended up becoming my strength in that speech.
Yeah.
And her dad and I, you know, he texted me today. We now know more of what we're going to do. And like this gala event really like helped.
Okay.
And it also helped me grieve her again.
Yeah.
Because the first time I had gone out to DC, like, I didn't feel like I could really grieve her.
Yeah.
And I think I was feeling so ashamed of my grief for many reasons, partially because of my
Your ex. Yeah.
And you know what's so funny about this is that my ex used to say that to me. And Jacob, the day that I made that speech, I texted him when I was done. And he said, I'm sure you did amazing. And I know that Polina and God were there with you. And I can't even fathom that I went from like somebody who wouldn't allow me to grieve to that. And like, that's because I found the love for myself. Yeah. And so like when all of that's going on, you know, because I had moved to, oh my God, I jumped back and forth a lot.
No, it's okay. But I want to ask you a couple of things. So the love that you found for yourself over the 3 years, now you have over 3 years, right? 3.5 years.
Yeah.
So is some of that 12-step?
All of it is. And that's what I was going to say.
That's what I want to ask you about.
I want to get into that.
Let's talk about your 12-step experience.
Yes.
You know, I always ask your favorite step.
Yes.
Talk to me about your 12-step experience.
So, actually, I didn't finish my steps until I was 3 years sober.
That's fine.
And I was so ashamed of it. And I'm not now.
Yeah.
But, like, I had moved to San Diego when I was almost a year sober to be with my dad after he got out of jail. And we were going to meetings together. And I had Janice as my sponsor first. Do you know Janice?
You know me. I probably do.
Names. You do.
Okay.
She's fucking hard ass. She ended up dropping me because I wasn't doing all the stuff she wanted me to do.
Okay.
I was still kind of like a dry drunk.
Okay.
And I was so focused on like everything else. I was focused on my relationship that was still tumultuous.
Yeah.
We were like breaking up, getting back together, all of that shit. And then like I start kind of feeling that like complacency. And I realized that like the way that I'm feeling surrounding my current unhealthy relationship, surrounding my current issues with my dad, even though he's sober, like that's because I haven't fucking done my steps. Like, no shit, I'm not working a program. Of course I'm going to be fucking restless, irritable, and discontent. And like not have solution. And so I found a new sponsor finally, and I like sat on my steps for a while. But when I found her, she had 7 years sober. She has 8 now, and she's still my sponsor. But she got sober young.
Okay.
And I actually met her through Young People's AA, which I used to be involved in, and I'm not anymore for various reasons. It's not the best environment for me.
Parts of 12-step are incredibly fucking dysfunctional, and I'm sure YPOT is sometimes too.
It is.
Yeah.
But my sponsor, her name is Jazzy, and she took the approach of accountability with compassion, which is the same approach that the treatment center I went to took. So I think that that's what works for me because I'm like sensitive.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I started working the steps with her and slowly started being of service more. When I worked at CASA, they didn't have any H&I panels there, and I started 4 H&I panels when I got there.
Okay.
And that was cool to see too. But like finally realizing when I did my steps, because I had done my steps well in Orange County up to my 8th step.
Okay.
And I always say that the reason why that happened is because I was not fucking ready to live up to my living amends that I had to make. And that's why I did not make my amends.
Interesting. Okay.
And I know that now.
Yeah.
And I was like, for so long trying to figure out why the fuck I was sitting on my steps. And it's like, I wasn't fucking ready for like,
I get that.
The responsibility of living up to my shit.
I get that.
And I wasn't ready to keep my word.
Yeah. And
I was still sick.
Yeah.
You know, like of course I had improved a lot, but I was still sick.
I totally get that. I didn't talk about being sober this time until I had about 2 years. And a lot of it was because I had no idea if it was going to stick.
Yeah.
I'm like, I'm not going to talk about it yet.
Exactly.
What if I want to drink? And everybody knows I'm sober.
Yeah. And I would like not want to tell people that I hadn't done my steps because I knew people were going to tell me, get the fuck on your steps.
Right. So what about the steps was so transformative? Like which ones?
So I think, I mean, obviously, as we all know, we do 1, 2, and 3 and, 10, 11, and 12 every single day.
Right.
But I think that for me, one of the biggest and most pivotal, and this is so fucking cliche, was my 4th step. My 4th and 5th.
You can say that, yeah. Because
I did this 4th and 5th step. I still was, in my brain, the victim. I was the victim in every single fucking situation I was ever in my life. And in my part, in the column of my part, almost every single resentment I had, I thought that my part was that I let it get to me. And that was all. I thought that was the only part that I had in the situation was letting it get to me.
And your sponsor said, actually, you have a part in this even happening?
Yeah.
Okay.
We like went through all of it again. And she was like, what the fuck, Ashley?
Can you give me an example of one of them?
Yeah, absolutely. My 27-year-old ex.
Okay.
I put that I had my part in the situation was that I stayed in a relationship with him and that I let it get to me or let him get to me. The reality is no, I stayed in a relationship with him and that's partially accurate as to my part, but the feelings behind that were the need for validation and reassurance, which is the self-centered, egotistical alcoholic in me that doesn't want to look inward.
Right. Okay.
So that opened my eyes.
Yeah.
And my sponsor, she still fucking gives me shit for that to this day because it was really delusional.
Yeah.
And
Dude,
like,
for me, taking accountability in situations is the quickest way out of the anger. Like even, Skylar was using, and I was so mad at him for all the money that we lost because we made this money selling the studio and then it was all gone.
Yeah.
And I finally realized recently, still, 9.5 years, like I took that money away after the very beginning. I used it, keeping this house, because I didn't want to go find a room off Craigslist and bring my dog. I wanted to keep my beautiful townhouse in San Alejo Hills.
Yeah.
I chose to spend that fucking money. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I chose to get him a sober living. But like for me, and I know sometimes people from the outside, like my friend Jana that I work with who's not in recovery, will be like, no, that was entirely his fault. And I'm like, no, it wasn't. I know he was using, but I chose to spend the money in that way. And for me, that's the quickest way out of anger at someone is for me to look at my part in it. Accountability for me is the best tool I have.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And like through working my steps, like I started to realize that like I was a lot more selfish than I thought I was.
Yeah.
I didn't think that I was selfish because I hated myself.
Yeah.
But it turns out that hating myself is still self-centered because I'm thinking only about myself.
Yeah.
So, of course, I was a fucking self-centered, egotistical alcoholic, and I still am to my core if I'm not doing what I need to do
Right.
for the daily reprieve. Like, in my heart, and like, as a person, to my core, I am an alcoholic. I'm an addict. I'm codependent. I'm egotistical. I'm selfish. I'm self-centered. I will always have that.
Right.
And if I don't work a program, I'll go right back to that being like my only personality.
Right.
Like, I don't say ever that I'm a recovering addict or recovered addict.
Right.
I say recovering.
Yeah.
Because for me, I don't ever want to think like, oh, I got past that.
Totally.
Or it can't happen to me, or I'm not selfish anymore.
Right.
But doing my steps this time, like, it just showed me that I'm a lot more selfish and self-centered than I think I am. And like my like journey through my 4th and 5th step was actually going on right when my dad had relapsed again. Because my dad ended up moving back to LA.
Okay.
About a year and a half after I moved out here. And I was scared. And I was angry too because I moved out here because he wanted me to move out here. And so of course I was finding the self in that too. But when he got back home, he almost immediately relapsed. And that was something that actually pushed me through my steps.
Okay.
Because I was so angry at him and I was so upset at him and I was so thinking about me, wasn't being of service, which is the biggest fucking thing.
Yeah.
I wasn't of service.
Yeah.
When I was a dry drunk and like I was miserable.
Yeah.
I was fucking miserable. Like, I didn't want to drink or use, but I was still miserable.
Yeah.
I was fucking irritable. I was selfish.
Yeah.
And so it's like working through my steps at that time, it all happened right at the time that I had, like, that it needed to happen.
Yeah.
It all happened the way that it was supposed to, of course. But, like, this past year has been probably the most transformative in a lot of aspects because I finished my steps within this past year. Surprise, surprise, of course it was fucking transformative because I finally, did what the book tells you to fucking do.
Yeah.
But I started being of service as well. Right now I have 3 sponsees.
Okay.
And they're all going into their first step and I'm super excited.
That's cool. That's good.
I've gone to the women's first step house a couple times.
Okay, to volunteer or whatever?
Yeah, with
with
Nikia.
Okay.
It was so much fun.
Yeah.
But, like, those were the things that I was lacking.
Yeah.
And, like, those were the things that I had to, like, work my steps and see that, like, the world doesn't owe me shit.
Yeah.
I'm not a fucking victim.
Yeah.
Which is why I say now things happened around me, didn't happen to me.
Yeah.
My dad's relapse happened around me. It didn't happen to me. And that is not why I'm an addict. And that is not my addiction to worry about. That is not my fucking business.
Yeah.
And it took me a long time to realize that. And I didn't realize that until I went through my, 4, 5, 6, and 7, really, like, all of it.
Yeah.
Where I really looked at it and found, like, where I was selfish in my life still and where I, like, needed to take accountability that I just completely was, like, blindsided by it in the best way possible.
Yeah.
And so this past year, I obviously finished my steps. I got out of that really terrible and toxic relationship that I was in. And I was toxic in it too. And I think that that's been a big change for me too, was getting out of that. Because that's the thing. It's like I have a pattern of codependency, as we can see from everything.
Me too.
And of staying when things get rough because of my mom. Like I see, and not because of my mom, because that's
I hear what you're
blaming
saying.
her. But so I accepted a lot less than what I deserved in that relationship, and I stayed.
Yeah.
After every blow fight, after like constantly breaking up, getting back together, because I thought that that's what love was. I thought love was sticking by somebody through everything.
Yeah.
And to an extent, it is, except doing their part too, and then in turn I was too focused on his shit that I wasn't focusing on my shit.
Right.
And it was this constant cycle, and that was when I realized that that is not love.
Yeah.
It wasn't love. It was fucking a distraction.
Yeah.
Because we started dating at 1 month, 2 months sober. He fucking would tell me that I was the only reason that he was sober still, and I would say the same thing.
Yeah.
And we didn't hold each other accountable. We didn't fucking care.
Well, it makes you feel so important when somebody says that to you.
Oh my God,
but that should be terrifying.
And I wanted to feel important. I wanted to feel valued. Like, I was like this man's fucking mother. Oh my God. It was terrible. Like, he also had stopped working a program. And as I was finishing my steps, he had stopped.
That's when it gets really clear, the differences between two people.
And, actually one of the things that kind of made me realize this was going on in that, and that my toxicity and my red flags in that situation were popping up. And I also kind of realized that it wasn't fair to him either, because I always had in the back of my mind, like, I always had that I just knew. I knew it wasn't going to work out. And I stayed for almost 3 years. Partly because I felt bad, partly because I thought that's what I deserved, and I thought that's what you're supposed to do in a relationship, but also partly because I wanted the validation and reassurance. Yeah. And I wasn't even really getting that. Right. But I wanted it. Right. I was searching for it.
Well, it's unbelievable that you know all this at 21 years old. How old are you again? 21?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
At 35, I was doing a 4-step with Rachel, or 5th step.
Yeah.
And realized I had a pattern of staying in relationships with men that I knew I wasn't going to marry. Because my resentment was about never being married and being old. And I realized that my part in that resentment was that I was staying with guys that I wouldn't marry. And like, for you to recognize and understand these patterns now is so incredible. You mentioned you get a reprieve daily.
Yes.
What does that look like for you in practice? Do you have any, like, what does your 10th step look like? What does your prayer look like? Meditation? What do you do?
So I have the My Spiritual Toolkit app.
Oh, cool. Okay. I've never heard of that. What is that?
Oh my God. It's amazing. It's like 99 cents a month.
Okay.
Or maybe a week, but still 99 cents.
Yeah.
And it has like shortcuts to, it has the daily reflection on there every single day, but it has shortcuts to acceptance, to the sick man's prayer, to the 10th step prayer, to like all of the fucking, like the 11th step prayer, like all of it.
Oh, I love that.
Everything.
My Spiritual Toolkit. Yeah. I'll put it in the notes.
It has spot check inventories.
Okay.
For harms, fears,
I need this. Okay.
I use those throughout my day when I need it, which it happens, obviously.
Yeah.
And I love that because I get to do it on the go.
Yeah, totally.
And I like on my phone. And then they also have 10 step inventories on there as well.
That's so cool.
So that's what I do every day. Okay. And I also read Upon Awakening, 86 to 89. And I have a group chat with my sponsees. And we all send gratitude lists.
Okay.
Because I realized when I started giving them direction to do that, it was because my sponsor had given me that direction. Mm-hmm. But I had kind of started slacking off on it. Totally. Myself. And so what I told them is, I was like, you know what? I'm going to make a group chat, you guys, because I'm going to send mine too, and it's going to be accountability for all of us. And so that's what I do every day as well. So 86 to 89 in the morning, or, whenever I get up, and praying, obviously. Praying for gratitude and not just for, like, my needs or my wants. Right. And being of service to my sponsees and reaching a hand out, like all of these things. And remember that I am an addict to my core. Yeah. That I have a fucking obsession of the mind. And if I ever stop working a program, I will give into that obsession of the mind. And then the physical allergy will come and I'll die. I don't have another fucking relapse in me. Yeah. I don't. I'm lucky I didn't die like when I did because I was fucking taking laced pills.
Yeah, totally.
But like I have to wake up every day and I have to fucking humble myself is a big thing. I have to remember like it doesn't even fucking matter how much time I have. It doesn't matter that I've built a good life for myself. Like that shit doesn't matter because alcoholism and addiction doesn't fucking care.
Right.
And also it doesn't make me better than anybody else.
Right.
Because we're all the fucking same.
Yeah.
We're all just to our cores fucking junkies and addicts and assholes.
Yeah. Dude, I gotta say too, I've learned so much from you kids that I've been interviewing. I wasn't sponsoring for years by choice. I ran it by Rachel and I was like, I'm a bad sponsor because I had my studio and it was COVID and blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
And she was like, you can be of service in other ways. Fine. And I was like, okay. And I'm interviewing all you fucking 23-year-olds who are doing H&I and sponsoring.
I love H&I.
I know. And I'm like, oh my God, I'm not doing dick. And I'm the person at HA with fucking 10 years. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And Jacob's like, you aren't texting me back about H&I. And I'm like, I know. And so I made a choice. I was like, I'm going to start sponsoring again. The fuck is my problem?
Yeah.
And I raised my hand on Saturday. And I don't know how this girl saw me from the...
You got sponsored?
Yes. I went like this and she saw me and asked me and I was like, I don't even know how she saw me. But I've been so inspired by you guys, by you, by Jacob, by Sebi, by Kevin, like all the kids quote at the meeting. I'm like, look at you, dude. You're like 40 and these kids are like really crushing service. And I've been really inspired by all of you guys.
I love that. And that's the great thing about the program is like, I was telling my sponsees this because it's like, obviously they like sponsoring helps us too.
Of course.
You know?
I'm
of course.
only doing it for selfish reasons.
And it happens. Yeah. But like when I found out my dad got arrested yesterday, I was about to get on a call with my 3 sponsees to read in the book. And I was so excited. Yeah. And I was like, this is what I need. And I was like, fuck, I'm coming on Janine's show tomorrow. This is what I need to get out of myself. Yeah. And so like, there were all of those like moments that like, where this past year where I've really just like kind of stood up for myself in different ways. And I still have ways to go, but I've worked on my emotional sobriety. I've worked on making sure that I'm doing my fucking routine every day, that I'm of service, that I'm staying out of myself. Yeah. And like holding myself accountable when I'm doing things that are selfish or when I'm not acting in the way that the steps and the book tells us to act.
What does emotional sobriety mean to you?
I think that for me, emotional sobriety has a lot to do with like the selflessness as well. Like I think that for me, it's like my emotional sobriety, when it is intact, it's because I'm a lot less selfless or selfish, like because I'm acting in selfless ways. And also for me, it means acting like the way that in the principles, like living in the principles. Okay. And like, for me, it's like, for me, it's like
and I'm actually asking because I kind of don't know. I want you to
actually never like answered that question as a whole, and I feel like that's why I'm kind of thinking on it right now. But like,
I think it's what you just said though. Living in the principles makes sense. For me, it would maybe be like emotional regulation.
That too. I was just gonna say,
which I don't always have. You know,
when shit pops off. Yeah. It's like, you know, sometimes I do still have my moments, of course, but eventually I, you know, do a 4th and 5th step, pray on it, look at my part. But like last night, I was angry. Yeah. I was so mad. And I was like yelling at dinner after CA, talking to like Craig and some of my friends because my mom had told me that she wasn't going to bail my dad out. And then she told Craig that she was. And I was mad. And I was yelling. And at the end of me yelling, I looked at them. I said, I know I'm not acting my fucking most spiritual self right now, but tomorrow I will. But right now, I'm fucking mad. Yeah. And then I woke up this morning. I read my pages. I prayed for that resentment to be lifted. I reminded myself it's not fucking about me. Yeah. For me, that is part of my emotional sobriety, is like, of course, it's best to promptly admit when I'm wrong, but sometimes it does take some time. Right. But like, that's okay. Yeah. You know, everyone has like, we all have our moments, especially like I said, like with right now and the way that I'm feeling with my like mental health stuff as well. And like, I also have been getting, I've had to get a lot of like dental work done recently.
Oh, you have?
Yeah.
Okay.
So when I was using, I didn't brush my teeth.
Yeah.
Like ever.
It's common.
When I first got sober, I went to the dentist in Orange County and they said, you have cavities on almost every tooth.
Oh, yeah.
And I was like, okay, but I didn't do anything about it.
Okay.
So then, oh my God, a couple months ago, I was actually eating candy that Jacob had bought me. He's such an angel. And all of a sudden, my tooth breaks in half.
No.
This tooth.
Oh, no.
And I start crying my eyes out. And I'm like, I look so fucking
It's so
ugly.
embarrassing.
And like, yeah. And
I know.
so I went to the dentist the next day and I like cried and I totally trauma dumped. I was like, I'm a recovering addict and I didn't brush my teeth when I was using. And this is why this happened. And they were like, fuck. And I ended up finding out that I had to get the tooth extracted. But something that is crazy is like this whole process of going to the dentist constantly.
It's a whole thing.
And there's an emotional attachment to it. Of course.
Yes. So there's a lot of shame, I think.
Yes. So I had to get another tooth extracted on this side in addition to the one I already got extracted. I still have to get 2 more root canals, like fillings on almost every tooth, all of this dental work. And like the implant itself, so expensive.
It's so expensive. I know.
So expensive. Like
normal people hate it, and I think for us it's even more embarrassing because it's like, well, it's our fault. And you know what I mean?
Exactly. But then, so we had dental credit, and that was like the only reason why I'm able to get the implant. But then, this is crazy. I got the extraction, I was getting the implant put in, and they tell me that they had to take out more bone than they thought, and that it was going to be an extra $3,000.
Oh, no.
And I call my mom, and I'm crying. My mom's crying, and she's freaking out, and she asked to talk to like the front desk lady who's helping me out, and I hand the phone over. It's on speaker, and my mom was mad, and she was like kind of going off, and I like grabbed the phone. I was like, hey mom, like I understand that like you're upset. I'm stressed out as well, but this person that you're speaking to has no control over how to help me. Like, I was like, can we please just like breathe? And she was like, okay, I'm sorry. And I was like, mom, like I can tell you one thing for sure, everything's gonna be okay. I just know it. And so I hand the phone back. As soon as I hand the phone back, I get this thought. And I'm like, why the fuck have I not thought about adding dental care to the scholarship fund?
Oh, yeah.
And so my mom is still freaking out. And like, maybe this was bad timing. But I was like, Mom.
I also want to add dental care to the scholarship.
I was like, a silver lining in this is that I'm going to talk to Doug, which is my best friend's dad, about like doing dental care within our scholarship. And like, for one, I'm still shocked that that's what I thought of because I was so stressed out and so upset.
Totally.
And my mom is just like, and then halfway through the phone call, my mom, she goes, oh my God, Ashley, I just got approved for another $3,000 in dental credit to cover all of it. As we're on the phone.
Yeah.
Then she gets off of the phone and she's talking, before she gets off the phone, she's talking to the receptionist. The lady was like, we can try to see what we can do about cutting the costs down, but like, obviously like what we're paying for right now is only the implant, and that's all we could afford.
Yeah.
And my mom starts crying again, and she goes, I'm a single mom, like she really deserves this, like Ashley deserves this, and I just really want her to get the help that she needs to take care of her teeth. Like I want this to be able to be something that's like in the past. And then she just kept saying how much like she thinks I deserve it, and like of course that was just super sweet. But then she gets off the phone and I find out that since my first appointment, when they had to extract the tooth, and I've gone to that dental office probably about 12 times in the past couple months, they had all been talking in the office, and I guess they have something where once a year they pick one patient from their office and they do free service.
Oh, wow.
And when my mom got off the phone, the receptionist looked at me and she said, so we have this. And every single person in this office, 2 days after that, I was about to fly out and speak at this event for the scholarship fund. And like, they told me that they were going to do their best to make sure I could get it. And they told me last week that I am getting my services for free. And I called my mom when I got home and I was like, Mom, I told you everything was going to be okay.
Yeah.
And like, I ended up telling them about the scholarship fund because it was just such a God-shot moment for me where it's
that's
like,
the miracle of recovery and giving, and then it comes back. And then,
yeah, like they had no idea that I was about to go out there and like speak to help all of these women. Like, they had no idea.
Right.
But they just all had like heard some of my story.
Yeah.
And they were all awesome. They're amazing at my dental office.
Last thing I want to ask you. First thing you said when you got here today was, my dad got arrested last night.
Yeah.
What's going on with your dad, and where are the two of you at?
Yeah. So yesterday, my mom calls me. She starts asking me normal questions about my day. She does this shit. And she goes, so I have some news. I was like, okay. She's like, your father got himself arrested yesterday. And I was like, oh. And she was like, he says that it was the person in the passenger seat had paraphernalia and they impounded the car, and I had to drive your grandparents down there to get the car because it's in their name. And she's like just telling me all of this stuff. And my dad had actually told me a few weeks ago, I saw my dad and he told me he was 4 months sober, and
Oh gosh.
I had a hard time believing him.
Yeah.
Because as addicts, we know.
Totally.
We know. And normally, you know, somebody close to me, if they were high and I could tell, I would call them on their bullshit, but not my dad.
No.
Because he scares me for good reason. But he told me he was 4 months sober. He told a lot of people out here that he knew that he was 4 months sober. He was convincing to everybody else. But the whole 5 days that I was in LA, he didn't sleep.
Yeah.
So, like, I knew. So when he told me that he was sober, I wanted to believe it so badly, but I just knew that it wasn't the case.
Yeah.
And so finding out that he did lie to me again was really heartbreaking for a second there. And, like, my mom basically just got mad at me because I asked her if she was going to bail him out. She was like, fuck no. And I was like, okay, well, are you going to, like, let him go home? And she was like, I don't know, Ashley. And I was just like, okay, I'm sorry. Like, I didn't mean to, like, upset you. And then she's like, your sister's devastated. And I'm, like, sitting there. She's telling me this, and I'm crying my eyes out. And she just keeps saying, your sister's devastated. And your father did this to himself. She's right.
Yeah.
But in that moment, I felt for the millionth time like I was back in fucking 6-year-old Ashley's body, feeling left, lied to, and betrayed again.
Yeah.
And I have not talked to my dad. I mean, I did get the message today that he is out of jail. I don't necessarily think that I'm going to reach out. That's something that I've also been able to do in the past years, set boundaries.
Okay.
And that's been difficult. And then with, you know, that going on, and then I also have my struggles with PMDD.
Yeah, really quickly, because we've gone 2.5 hours, which is crazy.
Oh my God.
I know, I didn't even realize it. So
I talk so much.
No, I do too, trust me. So
Holy fuck.
briefly, what is PMDD and how do you manage it in sobriety? Because I'm sure you're not the only person dealing with it. I know you're not. I mean, obviously.
Yeah. So PMDD stands for premenstrual disorder. And basically what it is, you know how like when you're PMSing, there's like maybe 1 or 2 days before your period where you're like a little extra emotional or like, you know, and then you get your period and you're like, oh, that's why. And it's usually just like 1 or 2 days.
Right.
PMDD is actually something that your body has those PMS symptoms for 2 fucking weeks.
Wow. Okay.
And it is like, I always say to people, it's like PMS times a million.
Yeah.
Like suicidal ideation.
Oh my gosh.
And there's actually really high suicide rates for people with PMDD. And when I am like in the fucking grips of PMDD, like I used to just like, there was part of me that like was trying to tell myself to suck it up.
Yeah.
And it's like, I have a great life. Like, why am I upset? But like, it's a mental health disorder.
For
like,
sure it is.
It's a mental illness. And so it's like, for me, like when I am in it, and you know, like the past week or so I have been, even the day that I spoke too, like I went home that night, even though I was so glad I spoke, for no reason I just sat on my bed and cried, and I felt lonely.
Yeah.
And I don't feel lonely in recovery anymore.
Yeah.
But like the depression, the anxiety, like last night I couldn't sleep until like 2 a.m. and I was just sitting on my bed and I was just crying, and I was just like telling myself all of these terrible things. I was telling myself that if when I go on here that I was gonna just like not say anything right, like my mind just starts telling myself stuff like that. Like I was terrified, and like I started telling myself last night that like I didn't deserve to like come and sit here and do this, and that like I'm not good enough, that I'm not worthy enough for people to want to hear my message, that I'm not worthy enough to, you know, talk about my journey. And none of that is true.
Right. What's the treatment?
It depends.
Okay.
I just started on medication.
Okay.
I started on an SSRI.
Thank God. Okay, good.
I know that a lot of people with PMDD take
Right.
Literally, I go into any doctor's office, even like a gynecologist appointment, and I'm like, I'm an addict, by the way. Like,
Yeah.
so I'm on an SSRI now.
Okay.
And I just restarted therapy.
Okay.
But there's no like cure.
Ugh. Okay.
And it's like so upsetting, and like it's not talked about enough.
Well, that's why I was glad you wanted to bring it up, because I've never had a guest bring it up. And, you know, my audience is obviously a lot of women, and I'm sure they experience this.
Yeah.
And in sobriety, you feel it even more, obviously.
Yeah. And
you're not going to drink a glass of wine through it, you know? So.
Yeah. And that's the thing. It's like I have those moments where like, and it's not even just with the like depression, anxiety, you know, suicidal ideation. It's comes with a lot of like cognitive things too.
Oh shit.
Like really brain, whatever reason, like when I am in my PMDD phase, like I'm really brain foggy.
Oh gosh.
I'm really brain foggy.
Yeah.
I get even more anxious.
Is it really bad cramps too? It's physically painful too.
It is,
okay.
yes. It is, yes. But for me, like the emotional pain is worse than the physical.
Okay. Will it get better as you get older?
I don't know.
Okay.
There's not much research
of course.
either. But like
it's women, of course.
Yeah, exactly. Which is part of why we, you know, with the scholarship fund, we focused
on women.
On women solely.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's like something that a lot of even women don't know what it is.
Totally.
I've said it to women before and they're like, what is that?
Well, I kind of knew, but I didn't know the terminology, you know? So.
And it's like taboo to a lot of people.
Definitely not taken seriously.
Women, but also it's like basically PMDD is like almost on the same level as like postpartum.
Okay. Shoot. Okay. All right.
Which is something people don't take seriously either.
Yeah, true.
And so like throughout my days, like the biggest thing that I have found as the solution is to not isolate even when I want to isolate.
Okay.
To, you know, not like I try to kind of like if something upsets me involving another person when I'm in this phase, I'll hold off on talking about it to them.
Okay.
Because I'm like,
that's smart.
But I overthink a lot. Like I overthink and I get these like almost paranoid thoughts.
Yeah.
And like apparently like I thought that was not normal and I never talked about it. But like now that I've kind of started to like research more, like that's a thing. Like women who struggle with PMDD get these like overthinking paranoid delusions.
Okay.
So like for me, it shows up as like nobody likes me. My relationship is not going well even though it's going amazing. My boyfriend's gonna cheat on me. He would never fucking do that shit.
No.
He's amazing. Or like I'm not good enough is one of the biggest things. And then that in turn trickles into everything else.
Okay.
And so it's like, it's fucking hard. I'm not going to lie. Like when I'm going through it, I'm going through it.
Yeah.
And I am actually kind of proud of myself because I was like this close last night.
Me too.
Even though it's a mental health thing, I still do lean into my program within it. But like also one of the big things is that I tell people.
Okay. When you're struggling.
I tell people close to me, I'm having these PMDD symptoms right now. You know, like I talk about it with Jacob and he has agreed that he's going to like start to kind of like research it and find out more about it because it's something that's going to happen every month.
Yeah.
And I like just make sure that I'm not isolating is the biggest thing.
Okay.
Because the suicidal ideation gets a lot worse if I isolate.
Okay.
And I don't really get the suicidal ideation when I'm not isolating.
Okay. But
I get the thoughts of just like not being good enough. And like, that's
well, you
where
put me on your list for people to call when you have PMDD.
I absolutely will.
Okay. And I cannot thank you enough for sharing your time with us today.
Of course.
What's the name of the scholarship fund? I'm going to put it in the show notes.
Polina White Memorial Scholarship Foundation?
That's what you said before.
Yeah, I know.
Either way, I'll connect all the stuff too. I'll connect all the links and everything too. So
Okay, maybe cut out when I said it the second time because now I'm embarrassed.
no, don't. This is normal, but I can.
Okay.
Well, thank you so much, Ashley. I appreciate it so much. Did you have fun?
Thank you. I did.
Okay, good.
Did you have fun?
Of course.
Yay.
Yes. Yeah, I knew I would.
Beautiful.
Well, thank you so much, honey.
Thank you.